My guess is Michelle Levine, and she has been abducted all her life. She has written a book about it. We're going to get a pencil and paper. We're going to be repeating an email address for you, and we're going to tell you how you can get a copy of her book in just one moment. You hear to Michelle Levine, and Michelle, let's get the information kind of stuff out of the way first. Your other email address is?
Okay, it's the same beginning, Mickey, M-I-C-K-K-E-E, at TIAC.net, TX.net.
Well, that's hard.
Yeah, the AOL one is the one that gets picked up the most often.
Yeah.
But once in a while, it does tend to get filled up. So.
I know about that. All right. Now, you have written a book. It is a summation of how to deal with being abducted. It's called the Alien Abduction Survival Guide by Michelle Levine, with a foreword by Mark Davenport and all the rest of it. It's very nice. It's got drawings in it. And one of them, as a matter of fact, is going to make me ask a question here in a moment. But how do they get your book?
Well, it is available in bookstores. It can be ordered, but the quickest and most direct way to get it is to order it directly from the publisher. That's Wildflower Press, and they have an 800 number, which is 1-800-366-0264, or you can get it off the internet from Wildflower Press at Blue Water Publishing, or Blue Water P, which is Blue Water Publishing, all one word, BLUEWATERP.com / what do they call that thing? Tilde? Tilde?
Thing. I'll tell you, you're better off not doing this, dear.
Okay.
No one's going to get it.
All right.
The 800 number is the best shot. Repeat the 800 number.
Okay. The 800 number is 1-800-366-0264.
All right. Good. A lot of, or if not most of the photo or the drawings that you have put in your book that depict human beings depict naked human beings, naked women. And I can't.
You make it sound like it's really a nasty picture.
No. No. As a matter of fact, they're very well-formed naked women. That wasn't where I was going with this. I was going even a little further. You talk of children that have come from you, and certainly other abductees that have the same sort of story to tell. Is impregnation always, do you think, an antiseptic sort of medical procedure, or is there ever sex involved?
Well, first off, I'd like to separate the nakedness from the sex, okay, because there is sex involved in some of the procedures. Often abductees have their clothes removed, but it's not like orgy time, okay? It doesn't really connect. I mean, if you're naked and scared, you're not going to be...
naked and sensual.
Right, exactly. A lot of times abductees do find clothing or have clothing, where I hate to say issued to them, but a lot of times people who are in this environment are wearing sort of these kind of one-piece mood type, long T-shirt type things.
So they don't issue belts and stockings?
No, and generally a lot of the sex that...
now that is the question. Yeah, when you say sex, you mean sex as we understand it?
Well, generally, if you see generally when the sex act happens in this environment, it usually is not between two humans. Okay.
I understand.
All right. It's usually between a human and an ET. Sometimes it's forced. Other times this is something people don't like to remember, but other times it's not. Okay.
This is going to get into a very sensitive area, Michelle, but I'm going to presume that with all your experiences and perhaps all your children, this has occurred to you, certainly. What does your husband say about this?
Well, my husband isn't very pleased about it, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't see any husband who would be.
Well, exactly.
And unfortunately, though, it is a fact of my life. It is something that has happened to me. And I wouldn't be surprised, actually, if it's something that may have happened to him because of his possibly having some sort of encounters per association. But I do not know that.
Have you asked him?
Have I asked him if he's ever had sex with an alien?
That's yeah, that's right.
Actually, to be honest with you, no, I haven't. I suppose maybe I'll ask him this evening now that you brought it up.
Well, I had to ask. I just really had to ask that question. So I.
No, it's a valid question. You see, the sex involved with abductions is very real, and it is something that people remember. People are afraid to mention because they're afraid to be labeled perverts or weirdos or whatever.
Is it? Gee, dare I delve further?
Go for it. What the heck?
Really? Go for it? What the hell? Is sex with an alien good?
Well, it depends on what's going on. Now, if you are in a position where there is a female alien who straddles your body, stares at you intensely in the eyes, and is basically telling you you have to, you are in a situation where you're being dominated and you have to submit to this, that doesn't sound very pleasant to me. If you are in a situation where where you believe you're having sex with an alien, you wake up to find a tube on your genitals, collecting your genetic material, that's not going to be all that much fun either, I'm sure. If you are in a situation where you're having some sort of bonding experience with a particular alien who you have an attachment to, you may find that this is something that is very pleasurable. Like
sex between two humans.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad I asked. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Michelle Levine. Hello.
Art, hi. This is Larry from Abilene.
Abilene.
Kansas.
Yes, indeed, of course.
Yeah, I'm a single guy looking for a nice Jewish alien girl. I wanted to know if there's any possibility that I could play guinea pig. Everybody says that the minute if they were to see a craft or alien,
in other words, you want to be abducted, right?
If Michelle's getting abducted on a regular basis,
seems unfair to you.
Take my name along. I'll play guinea pig. I can't be hypnotized. Whatever.
All right.
I get it. I get this.
A lot of that. Sure. Yeah, I want to go. I want the experience. And now that we've added the sex to it, I imagine we're going to have. Well, anyway.
But generally, I get it from 15-year-olds who want to play Star Trek. To be honest with you, no, seriously. But I really don't know how to get somebody abducted. I mean, I never really gave it a lot of thought.
Well, I've always thought I'd run the other way.
You never know what you're going to do until it happens. I mean, people might be saying, I line up, I'm here, I line up, and then that ship lands in front of them and they're gone.
It's true. It's true. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Michelle Levine. Hello.
Hi, Art. This is Kurt in Medford.
Medford, Oregon. Yes, sir.
It's Michelle?
Yeah.
That's right.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
When I was a child, I was abducted several times.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems that they showed me things that were rather horrifying, like putting up a view screen. I saw, like, massive tidal waves, like fire falling from the sky, and just all kinds of
scary stuff.
Volcanic eruptions and a series of different events that sort of horrified me.
Earth changes, yes.
Right, exactly. And that's one of my questions, so maybe you could relate to something about that. And the second one is, are we somewhat asleep? Like, I don't know if you remember the Twilight Zone that came on several years ago. It was about mannequins. And they didn't know that when they were human, they didn't realize that they were mannequins. And that when they realized toward the end that they were mannequins, they were told, well, why didn't you come back on time? And
I remember that one.
Do you remember that?
Oh, that was a great one. Yes, of course I do. In other words, Michelle, are we in some sort of altered reality now, and the real reality, that sounds great.
Yeah.
The real thing is somewhere else.
Well, if you believe what they're telling you, if you believe what they're telling a lot of abductees, then the answer to that would be yes. Basically, the way it was laid out to me is that only things that are eternal are real. And I don't mean just linearly in time eternal, but I mean things that are well, basically, if it has, even linear sense, if it has an ending in any direction, then it has a beginning in that same direction. It's eternal, it isn't real. Meaning our physical lives here on Earth aren't really part of reality, and we are sort of like node in a physical existence that was created to be worked for reality to work some sort of problem out, somewhat like a clockwork Earth type of thing. And it gets actually really complicated from there.
Gee, that was complicated enough for me. Hold on one second, Michelle. We'll be right back to you. My guest is Michelle Levine, and all mannequins should now listen carefully.
If you suffer from 800-444-1049.
Betty and Dries and Luca said the Alien Abduction Survival Guide may be an aid to help one through the journey and psychological maze created by a UFO experience. I heartily recommend reading this book. That's pretty good testimonial, I should say. And it's from Wildflower Press, and I'm going to let you give the number one more time. What is the number, Michelle?
It's 1-800-366-0264.
Okay. Back to the phones. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Michelle Levine. Hi.
Good evening, Arthur.
Good evening to you. Where are you?
Michelle. This
Hello.
is Vince, the Magic Christian in Ventura, California.
Uh-huh.
I have a couple of questions, and I'll take my answer on the air.
All right.
Yes, Michelle, have you ever been in contact with anyone from the scientific or medical or military from the federal government of the United States?
All right.
That's number one.
All right, that's then halt there.
Okay.
Has anybody from the government contacted you?
No, not that I know of. I mean, I have some friends who are very conspiracy-minded and wonder if some of the friends I have may be military plants, but to my knowledge, no one from the government has contacted.
All right.
That's surprising. Number two, in your conversations with your fellow abductees in what you call the ET environment, have you ever found any what you might have perceived to be as Holy Spirit-filled, Bible-believing children of the King, Jesus Christ?
All right, thanks. That's why he calls himself the Magic Christian. He is indeed a born-again type. And it's a very interesting question. Of those in the community, those that you rub elbows with, are there generally many Christians, or is the group eventually bereft of them?
Well, I think that there's a very wide assortment of people, and many of the people have very strong Christian beliefs. My beliefs tend to be Christian in nature, but not church religious.
No, I understand.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. The question, Michelle, went to others. In other words,
right. Well, I don't really take surveys when I'm there. I don't ask people, so do you believe in the Lord Jesus? I mean, this is not the questions that are coming into my mind when I'm interacting with these people.
I'm with you. I just thought I'd clarify it, and you did. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Michelle Levine. Hello.
Hello, Art.
Yes.
This is Mark from Dwight, Illinois on SATCOM.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Michelle, I have two quick questions.
Sure.
You mentioned that you asked these aliens some big questions. Could you elaborate on that? I believe it was about our past, our religion, or whatever.
Excuse me, I didn't hear the question.
Okay, he said you asked some big questions about our past, our future, or religion. Some big questions. He asked, would you elaborate?
Well, I'm not exactly sure that I said I asked, but I do get volunteered an awful lot of information about things like the nature of the universe, the nature of God, and it's really hard to elaborate in a even in a half-hour segment, never mind a 10-minute segment or something about what this all means. And to be honest with you, a lot of a lot of people would say, well, I'm not sure if I'm going to believe that. It's one of those things that's very hard to explain in short term.
And I would say I'm not even sure you should believe it based on some of the rest of what you've told us. Not because you're fibbing to us, but because they seem to fib. Caller, you had a second question.
And, yes, one more. And have you ever sensed any real sensitivity during these alien encounters, or do they come across like typical HMO physicians?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, actually, that's one of the big myths out there. One of the biggest myths out there, that they have absolutely no feelings, that they're little robotic little guys that kind of do their own thing and could give a damn if you live or die. And the truth is, if you're lying on a table screaming in horror, or they know that if they give you even an inch to move, you're going to scratch their eyes out.
Yep.
They're probably going to ignore you and just go about their duties very robotically and just kind of, just kind of do their work. But once you open a dialogue with them and once you start interacting with them and talking with them, you find that they do have emotions, they do have feelings. Sometimes they express things differently than we would. Like I mentioned before, they have a sense of humor that I don't think many of us would find incredibly funny.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's definitely not Monty Python, but they do have these emotions, and there is this side of them that you don't experience until you've broken this fear and open a dialogue.
Look, if there's somebody out there, and there are many, being abducted, who have not read your book or, you know, can't get your book or whatever,
right.
and in a sentence or paragraph, you had to advise them, what would you tell them?
In a sentence, I would
or a paragraph.
In a sentence or paragraph, I think I would tell them that they have to be true to their own heart, and as far as anything else that they're exposed to, whether it be my book or someone else's book or a television show or a radio show guest, that they have to learn to be discerning in what they believe and what they don't believe, that they have to start keeping a log in a journal of what happens to them. Not only does it help you with your memories, but it also helps you to work out the emotions so that the next time you recall it, these things tend to flash back in your mind. The emotions won't hit you as hard. You have to start taking control. You have to start saying, okay, I realize this is happening to me and I can't stop it from happening. So how am I going to not only live with it, but I have to learn to cope with it. I have to try to turn it around and be my own boss here.
Well, as I said to you at the beginning of the program, a lot of that sounds touchy-feely, but if the true fact is that you're going to be abducted and there's nothing you can do about it, you might as well, I suppose, learn to accept it and be psychologically sound with it. And, Michelle, we're out of time.
It went by really fast.
Well, it always does.
Yeah, didn't you mention Contact Forum or ISCNI?
I know. But listen, you've been a sweetheart, and we'll have you back. And I appreciate your staying up this late and, being with us. So what can I say? Thank you.
It was a lot of fun, Art. I'm glad I did it.
Michelle, thank you, and look out for your mailbox.
It's going to be good.
Yeah, I know. See you later.
Thank you, Art. Bye-bye.
Take care. That's it, folks. We are out of time. Again, my special edition book, 1-800-864-7991, from an area near Dreamland in the Pacific Southwest. I'm Art Bell. Actually, the high desert. Good night. This has been Dreamland, a program dedicated to an examination of areas in the human experience not easily nor neatly put in a box. Things seen at the edge of vision, awakening a part of the mind as yet not mapped. Yet things every bit as real as the air we breathe but don't see. Please join us again next week at this time for Dreamland. Publication. Hi, Ray.
Good evening, Art.
Good to have you on the program. It's been a long time.
Oh, nice to be with you again.
I guess the way to begin is to begin, and that is to go back and find out how you begin. How did you meet up with and learn about Ms. Luca?
Well, it was back in 1976, and the Massachusetts MUFON group was looking for a good close encounter of the fourth kind to look into, and Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who was chief scientific consultant to the Air Force's Signed Grudge and Blue Book, forwarded Betty's letter to us. We sent an investigator to talk to Betty to see what kind of a person she was, and then instigated an investigation that lasted between 1977 and 1978 and resulted in a 3-volume, 528-page report for peer review. Betty, of course, was abducted from her home on January 25th, 1967, and underwent a remarkable abduction experience, which is paralleled by many other cases since then.
If I might back up a little bit, when you go and you investigate a case like this or any other, what kind of questions do you ask? Or have you learned to ask certain key questions that will help you determine fairly quickly what you've got on your hands?
I guess the first thing we did was do a character reference check on Betty to see if, she was of good repute.
Mm-hmm.
And that worked out very well. Had her fill out forms and interrogated her as regarding how much she could remember. Basically, all she could remember consciously and her father could remember was she was in the kitchen and her children and parents were out in the living room, and a bright reddish-orange light flashed through the pantry window, and the lights began blinking off and on, and then went out. And Betty's father rushed in to see what had happened, and he went to the pantry window and saw a bright light out in the field, and then saw these strange creatures coming toward the house. They really weren't walking. They were sort of floating up and down. They stopped at the window and looked at him, and that's the only thing he could remember. And then they came right through the wall, through the door, and put Betty's family into a state, I guess, for want of a better term, suspended animation, and convinced her to come with them out to a craft that was in the field, which she did. They floated up into the craft, and the smaller craft went up and entered a larger craft, and she was given the typical physical examination, etc. We put her under hypnosis, her daughter under hypnosis.
Mm-hmm.
Her father didn't want anything to do with it, but they both relived complimentary accounts of what had happened. We were interested in having her sit down with a psychiatrist and have a psychiatric evaluation, which she did. And she volunteered it, actually. She is a very devout fundamentalist Christian, and this was no part of her belief system, and she thought she was going crazy when these memories surfaced. So she actually asked if we could do this, and of course we were pleased because we were embarrassed to ask her if she would like to sit down with someone like that, and
Sure.
She passed in flying colors, and she also took a lie detector test, as did her daughter. When all is said and done, we were convinced at least that she and her daughter believed that this had happened to her. And of course, since then, many of the abduction experiences that have been reported parallel many aspects of her account. This was just the beginning, though. We found that she had abduction experiences way back in childhood as we continued to probe her background. So there was as you said, there were 4 books based on 4 what I call phased investigations between 1977 and 1994, and basically records her experiences.
Okay, Ray, I want to stop you at this point in the investigation and tell you what's coming up, but you really already know about it. I got a panicked call, and I mean panicked, from Bud Hopkins Friday. And he said that Nova is coming out and doing a series on his work and that of John Mack at Harvard. And basically it's going to be a hit piece. And it's going to basically try to rip to pieces the kind of work they've done. Charging false memory syndrome, induced memories by the examiner, that sort of thing. If somebody were to come and examine Betty's case, with regard to the kind of examination done, would they find room to make those kind of charges, or what kind of safety was used in the investigation?
Well, no leading questions were asked under hypnosis. Basically, we just let Betty relive the account and sort of provided some comfort to her when things got real rough. But the basic thing is to not ask leading questions and just let the person relive the abduction account. Now, Betty was like a blank blackboard. I mean, she had no interest in unidentified flying objects, and UFO abductions were fairly unknown back then to most people. So I thought she was a good case to investigate because she put a religious spin on her experience.
Yes.
This is all she knew, and she thought, well, this must be something to do with her religion, which I thought was great because she didn't interpreted as an extraterrestrial experience or something like that. So it was like taking a child, really, and probing the mind of someone that really didn't have false memories. A UFO buff that read an awful lot of things about abductions, which of course really didn't exist in those days. The Interrupted Journey had been published and so forth, but again, she wasn't interested. I think that no matter how vigorous UFO abduction research is, and the Allagash abductions, I think we did an excellent job on in documenting that particular case. No matter what you do, there are going to be people out there that are equal in authority to Dr. John Mack, for example, who will take the opposite side. They don't believe it happened, and they start off with the premise it couldn't have happened, so they come up with alternate explanations for it, which is good. But the problem with something like NOVA is, and they did this with the UFO phenomenon several years back, they will interview people, and they did, Dr. Hynek, for example. They will take things out of context as regarding what they said, and then they will put their own spin on it to come up with their own premise.
Oh, yes. I've got 10 pages from Bud of exactly that sort of thing that they have apparently done, and he's extremely upset. And John Mack, of course, doesn't need this either.
No, he doesn't. And, what they should really do is have each person, tell the audience about their research, what they've done, and so forth, and the pros and the cons, and then let them have it out with each other and have a rather sort of a refereed debate rather than sucking these people into something that they think is going to help their research and then finding out that what they're doing is sort of trying to slam the door on it. I think the abduction experiences have become so well known through a number of TV programs and books like my own and Bud Hopkins and Dr. Mack and so forth, that someone out there, conservative science, whatever you want to call it, decides that something has to be done, so they get, just like they did with the UFO phenomena several years ago, get some psychiatrists together and so forth and put them on NOVA, which is a very respected program, and use that as a vehicle to try to squelch all this stuff.
Well, the tip-off, of course, is that it's driven by an agenda. They have decided prior to the program exactly what kind of program they're going to do, and by hook or crook, they're going to make it come out that way.
It's a shame that Bud and John didn't realize that from the outset and try to get something on paper where they would, I don't know what they did, but make sure that what they wanted to say would be on TV. Unfortunately, they'll editorialize it according to their whim.
Well, that's the problem with television, Ray, is that you can even take something in context and then bring on somebody else with another piece of tape directly behind that person, showing the first to be seemingly ridiculous.
Right.
That's the ability of the cutting room floor. All right, well, you've done 4 books now.
And 9 books, actually. But
on Luca.
Right.
And my question is, with what you've told me about her experience thus far, that's a lot of material. That's a lot of material. So apparently the follow-up books then looked further into her background from that first incident.
Yes. What we did was the first incident, she relived a needle being placed up her nose and a little BB-like object being taken out of it, and we wondered how that got there. And when the hypnotist tried to find out, she became so upset that he felt he didn't want to put her through that. And so it was just sort of left for a while, and then we went back with a Phase 2 investigation with another hypnotist, and he let her go through it. And it happened when she was a 13-year-old. And probing deeper, we found out that it went even further back to earlier age. So we documented all of that in the Andreas and Affair Phase 2. And we got up to 1973, and again, she became so traumatized that we decided not to go any further. And later on, again, we picked it up and tried again, and was interesting how that happened, but it's a long story. But we picked up at 1973 in Watchers 2 and progressed through several abduction experiences that she had.
Ray, you use the term paraphysical a lot. I know what paranormal is. Paraphysical, would that mean a visit of the fourth type in which there was actual physical contact, or you were taken aboard a ship, or what does it mean?
Well, basically, many of the UFO reports that we've been getting over the years involve some very strange, what you might call paranormal phenomena or abilities associated with them, and many researchers don't know what to do with this stuff. They're hardcore, nuts and bolts hypothesis researchers that feel that UFOs are hardware from another solar system. And so a lot of this information just gets tossed out as frivolous or something that has nothing to do with the subject. And I decided that it was time to look at this and publish something on it. Paraphysical basically means something that can behave as if it had mass and weight on one end of the spectrum, but on the other end of the spectrum doesn't seem to have either. For example, you have UFOs that can take right-angle turns with no curve radius. You have UFOs appear visually on radar at point A and then suddenly sort of disappear and reappear at point B with no flight path between the somewhere, then come back from somewhere, from another dimension or whatever. Then you have UFOs that land, and they exhibit mass and weight. You have tripod marks, quadruped marks. Penetrometers indicate that there were tons sitting on those struts or whatever made the marks. So you have a paradox here. You have something that behaves as if it had mass and weight at some times, and other times it appears that it's weightless. The falling leaf motion, for example, is almost like something that is almost lighter than air, wobbling and hovering on its axis, bobbing on the air like a cork bobbing on the water. But there are a lot of other things that are curious about the UFO. You have not only them appearing and disappearing visually and on radar, you have their entities, like in the Andreasen case, pass through solid structures with ease, through walls, through doors. You have them, the entities appear as a ball of light and then become an entity and then disappear within a ball of light. And these are reports now. I'm saying if you take these things at face value.
Again, in and out, do you lean toward the other dimension theory?
What I'm doing is investigating that and saying that there's a lot of evidence for this. I know Dr. Hynek and Dr. Valet were coming to this conclusion, and I thought that, where are these people going? Because they were sort of my idols, and I felt that this was nonsense. But entities communicate with mental telepathy. They create, and this is interesting, they seem to create and conduct abductions, not physical abductions, but you have these abductees, for example, taken from a car or bed or a field and see their bodies left behind. And they undergo the same type of abduction experience as someone who has a physical abduction experience. And even more strange is the fact that after being abducted and physically examined in this state of being, they come back to their bodies and you have the same scars. And you explain that. And then you have people who have had close encounters like that. There are other types of phenomena that start up that they've never had experience with before. Poltergeist phenomena, OBEs, electrical sensitivity, seeing apparitions and so forth. It almost seems there's a meta-phenomena out there, and that UFOs are part of it, just as OBEs and NDEs and all of this extrasensory phenomena, paranormal phenomena that are exhibited in throughout the world. So you have these paraphysical attributes of both UFOs and their entities that I think demand attention. If you are studying something, that you don't leave out something because you don't like it or doesn't fit your hypothesis. And I decided to look at the paraphysical attributes of UFOs and entities, and in doing so, I saw that there was tremendous similarities between the close encounter of the fourth kind of abduction experience, especially the OBE's abduction experiences, and the near-death experience.
All right. That's exactly where we're going to pause right now, Ray. My guest is Ray Fowler, and that's exactly where we're going to pick up. Remarkable similarities, he said, between close encounters of the fourth kind and near-death experiences. That should be very interesting. As is most of what we do on Dreamland, I'm Art Bell from the high desert. There'll be more in a moment. Stay right there. I'm Art Bell. This is Dreamland. I'm not playing the phone number bumper because we're not taking calls right now. Due to the nature of this evening's show and the 3 separate hours that will yet all tie together, we're not, in all probability, until the last hour, I doubt we're going to take calls. You've heard me talk about to Raymond E. Fowler, and for a very long time, as many of you know, NDEs, or near-death experiences, have been of great fascination for me. And I am very curious, Ray, what similarities you see between NDEs, and boy, there have been books and thousands of cases, even children, explaining to us what happens when you die. What similarities are there between these NDEs and these close encounters of the fourth kind?
Well, there are some close encounters of the fourth kind, which we call OBE abductions. In other words, abductions taking a person in the out-of-the-body state, that are strikingly similar to the near-death experience. Both, for example, are in an OBE state. Both reportedly travel toward a bright light and are greeted by a loving being, and during their experience with this loving being, they experience a oneness with reality, and both sometimes are transformed into light themselves and experience communication by telepathy. Both are sometimes taken to a spacecraft and brought to a world of light called home. And both are very reluctant to leave the world of light when they're there and experience a sense of timelessness, and both return knowing that love is fundamental and very important. Both return with a concern for Earth's ecological state, and seem to indicate that there's a symbiotic effect upon the entities, whether they be the UFO entities or the entities that are met at the end of the dark tunnel and the bright light. So you have all these similarities, and that's from UFO research. Dr. Kenneth Ring reports that he has a number of cases on file that he calls mixed motifs. And these cases involve persons who experience what seems to be a UFO abduction during a near-death experience, just what I found on the other end of the spectrum, and they report being on board the same type craft, the same type entities reported by abductees.
Huh.
And so it's like he has this mountain of research that he's working with on NDEs, and I'm on the other end of the mountain, and we're sort of tunneling through there, and all of a sudden we bump into each other in the middle of this mountain of NDE and UFO research, and I find it very startling myself when I found these similarities. And
well, you said they were concerned about our ecology, and you said there was a symbiotic relationship, and we're always looking for motive with regard to UFOs and abduction experiences. Motive is very important. Cattle mutilations, all the rest of it, whatever's going on. Could it be, Ray, that our fate, or more appropriately, their fate, is in effect tied to ours, and so they have a natural concern?
Well, what seems to be going on, and this is so far out that I hardly even dare talk about it, but if you take everything at face value, and we haven't got that much time to go into detail,
right?
It would almost seem that those abduction experiences involving physical examinations and things like that may not be specifically genetic engineering at all. It almost looks like we are being bred like we would breed a herd of cattle. In other words, people tested, examined, and so forth for something else that's coming. In a nutshell, I would make an analogy like this, that we have a dragonfly larvae, for example, that lives in a water dimension. And later on it transforms into a dragonfly that lives in a totally different air dimension. And I hypothesize, and this is just a summary statement, that perhaps the dragonflies are the entities and they're returning to care for and warn the larvae, us humans, that they are polluting the pond, the earth, so badly that the larvae's existence is in danger. No more larvae, no more dragonflies. And this would explain the abduction NDE similarities. The entity's great concern about Earth's ecology and its attempts to monitor and preserve the human form for the next plane of existence. In other words,
that's very good.
We are they. And
they are us.
They are us. And no more us, no more them.
All right. Well, that does say it. Let's work with that for a second. And then how does that mix in with people's religious concepts? Or in your research, do you try to separate as carefully as you can religion from research? Or is it...
I try to be religion neutral in my research. I only get involved with it with Betty because she interprets her experiences within a religious context. But they told Betty that human beings, let's just go through a few things they told Betty. They told Betty that human beings were more than flesh and blood. They told her husband Bob that the human form would continue in another existence after death, and they indicated that humans will someday know the universe as they do, and these entities and the UFOs appear to enter our space-time from a dimension that may even coexist with ours. For example, when someone has an out-of-the-body experience, they are here, but no one sees them. They can't interface with what they see, and people who are left behind in what you might call a physical world can't see them either. So that's the only other dimension that humans routinely experience, is during an OBE or an NDE, which even goes further. So this dimension may be where the UFOs and entities originate, and this would explain the similarities between humanoids seen in both NDEs and UFO abductions. You know, scientists say that the humanoid form is unique to Earth. And if that's true, this is another indication that we're related to some of these humanoid Nordics that look almost just like us. In fact, Betty was told that the small grays were genetically altered human fetuses. So UFO entities assume other humanoid forms that appear to be, in fact, I don't think most people don't believe what I even said. This whole hypothesis is based on a what-if situation, but all you'd have to look at and read in the newspapers, the TV, you see the countless rivers and streams of ponds are dead and slowly dying.
Oh, yes.
You have acid rain, you have dioxin producing changes in reproductive and immune systems of animals. They told Betty that eventually mankind was going to become sterile. So you have all of these different things that are going on. The sperm count of men, for example, has fallen dramatically over the past 50 years, according to a number of studies.
Ray, there was an article in the New Yorker magazine last month that said sperm counts are falling so precipitously that it is possible they could go to zero within one generation.
Yeah, and you've got global warming reducing the amount of plankton, for example. Plankton is at the lower end of the food chain for all living things. You've got radiation from ozone layer disruption. You can go on and on and on and on. You would think we wouldn't have to be told, but if there is a symbiotic connection between them and us, and there is some prime directive which we have, or NASA has, if we were to meet other life forms, or they have some prime directive where they only can do this or that.
That's a good point.
I don't know. As a UFO investigator, I'm a reporter, and I report, and this is the first book that I've really speculated anything like this. And I never thought I would get to the point where I'd even consider something like this, but it's starting to all fit together. And again, I insist in the book, and if I talk to people, it's based on a what-if premise. If OBEs, NDEs, and OBE abductions are real valid experiences and the reports coming from abductees are real, then this is what you come up with. It's not what I wanted to come up with,
sure.
but this is what I come up with.
How have your colleagues greeted your latest effort?
They've been very silent. The people who are involved in NDE research, I think, are pleased. Dr. Kenneth Ring, for example, is very pleased, and he's sort of the father of NDE research, the Dr. Hynek of NDE research.
Sure.
And interestingly enough, John Carpenter, who's the head of our abduction research, our consultant in MUFON, wrote a nice blurb for the book. So I am getting some interesting and positive response for some UFO researchers, but some are completely silent. I think they're sort of stunned. They say, where is Fowler going? Along with Dr. Hynek and Valet, you see.
Well, maybe that's bringing this Nova kind of business at us now. The fact that so many of you are following trails, bravely I might add, that lead into writing books like this that are risky.
Yeah, well, just the abduction experience, the physical abduction experience, it will probably be the only thing that's really dealt with on the NOVA program. They probably wouldn't even consider dealing with the paraphysical side of the UFOs. The American Association for the Advancement of Science at one time allowed parapsychology in as a science, and that only lasted a few years, and they now have dismissed that as a science. So, unfortunately, we've been programmed from childhood by conservative, the scientific method, I guess, and religion and philosophy and so forth is regarding what can and what can't be, and it's just like a transponder on aircraft. If an airplane doesn't have a transponder, you know, the control tower operators and the radar operators just don't bother with it. And
that's true.
And we're sort of programmed that way, you know. If someone says they had an out-of-the-body experience to another person, that person will say, well, those things can't happen. And so you have all these people having these experiences, but they keep quiet about it because they aren't supposed to happen.
You describe in your book death, the experience of death as the ultimate abduction. What does that mean? The ultimate...
Well, that would mean that death, in other words, would be the same as an OBE abduction, but you would stay where, instead of being sent back. I mean, it would be the same thing as an NDE, but it would be the final abduction, if this is true. If the human form is growing what comes out of us when we have an out-of-the-body experience, for example, if the human form produces a humanoid form that exists in another dimension, then that essence, or whatever you want to call it, is taken in the OBE abduction, but it's very similar to what happens in the near-death experience. Now, these people are sent back. We don't know what happens, the people that don't come back, but the similarities are so striking between them. It would seem that there is a definite connection, between them, and that at death, it would be similar to an OBE abduction, going through the same type of thing as an NDE, but you don't come back. As I say, it'll be the ultimate abduction.
There are very many similarities, and what have you concluded, if anything, about the nature of death itself? Do you remember the movie Flatliners?
Yeah, I started to watch it one night on TV, and I got interrupted and never saw the end of it.
Well,
interesting.
The concept was interesting. You know, the story got a little wild, as they tend to do with the license they have. But it was very, very interesting in a bunch of young doctors taking each other, with agreement, to death's door, physical death. And then, of course, having all the facilities and the other doctors there to revive them to find out exactly what is on the other side. Has anybody actually ever, that you know of, Ray, experimented with that kind of thing?
Not that I know of. It's never been made public that they did. What is interesting in some of these abduction experiences is that these people are trained. they're trained on consoles and things like that. And you say, well, what are these people being trained for? They certainly aren't being trained for something now. And then you have a number of cases where the entities actually know when humans are going to die. I mean, they told Betty, for example, her 2 sons were going to die. And, a few days later they did. And I remember her coming to my house feeling very, very depressed because something was on her mind and her subconscious, and she didn't know what it was, but something terrible was going to happen. And I can remember, I even recorded this. She was crying and said that something terrible was going to happen. And we've been working with her during the investigation, and I tried to calm her down and said, well, it's just this investigation. I think it's just getting to you. And then she called me up about a day and a half later, and her 2 sons had died. Well, under hypnosis, she was told this, relived an experience where she was told this, and it was there, but she didn't remember. I have another report that where someone was told that someone was going to, several reports that where these entities during a UFO abduction experience were told that so-and-so was going to die or this person was going to die, and lo and behold, they did. So again, you had this connection with death, or either that or precognition.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting very, very strange, this whole thing, and this paraphysical side, the other side of UFO research, is not getting too much attention, and basically because it's so bizarre. I mean, just the abduction phenomenon is so bizarre that a lot of people don't want to deal with it, but when you get to this other side, which seems to be left out of the reports, it gets really bizarre, and it's very hard to articulate, myself to you and to your radio audience these things, because they seem to be so far, far out. I never thought I'd ever be talking like this.
Okay, Raymond, where from here? How does this line of investigation now proceed? If anything, it probably gets weirder. What method of continuing investigation do you see occurring?
Well, I'm hoping that people within UFO research know me and for some reason have some respect for me.
Oh, yes.
They're going to think, I've gone off the deep end, or they're going to say, hey, he's right. We should start documenting some of this other stuff and see where it leads us to. And this is science. You have your peers review your work and say, well, let's look at some of these reports and let's not ignore all of this stuff that's coming out, and let's see if what he says has any merit to it. What I'm hoping it will be is a catalyst for the nuts and bolts hardware enthusiasts out there to say, hey, we're just looking at one part of this. Let's look at the other side, too. Otherwise, we aren't looking at the whole phenomenon. It's like the blind man trying to describe an elephant. One describes the
yes.
tail. You know what I mean?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, it is. And
you're very much out on the edge.
the fringe.
Yeah, of the fringe. And as you say, your colleagues are at the moment silent. Do you think they are just absorbing what you have said, or afraid to comment on it, period?
I really don't know. I'm just glad that the director of abduction research from UFON on the board of directors with me put a nice blurb in my book, and it was complimentary, and I thought that was good because he was chosen for that position because of his prestige in in the area of abduction research. So, and then you have on the other end of the spectrum the Dr. Hynek of NDE research approving the work too. So, but I've been in there so long, and I really don't care about reputation as long as I'm trying to do what I feel is honest and objective work, no matter where it leads. People can think what they think now. I'm 62, and who cares?
I know that's the nice thing about getting a little older, isn't it? I notice the older you get, I'm the same way. I'm almost to the point where I'm going to say what I want on the air, and to hell with it. So I'm glad you're there, and I look forward to following your work. And as you know, we're going to talk with Betty Luca next.
Right, and give her my regards. And next year we'll have the Andreessen Legacy, which will try to put more of this together.
Wonderful. I really appreciate your having come on the show. I know how busy you are. Raymond Fowler, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ed.
Take care. That's Raymond Fowler, author of many, many, many books, the latest of which is The Watchers 2, written all about Betty Andreessen Luca. And guess who's next? That's right. Betty Andreessen Luca, coming up next, right here on Dreamland. One of the most famous abduction cases in all history. We'll be back. Good evening across the country, now 171 affiliates strong. This is Dreamland. I'm Art Bell. And I'm sure the rest of you felt as this faxer does about Raymond Fowler. Simply, Art, here's one ufologist who is with Ray Fowler. I always appreciate his willingness to move forward, and he certainly has done that. A number of books now, the latest, Watchers 2, all about the Betty Andreessen Luca affair, and we are privileged to have with us in a moment Betty Andreessen Luca and her husband Bob, and he'll corroborate some of what she has to say. All coming up in just a moment. Q3. Now, off we go to speak with, I hope we're connected well, Betty Andreessen Luca and her husband Bob. Are you two there?
Yes, we are, Art. Hello to you, and hello to all your listeners.
I know Raymond Fowler was in Boston. Where are you?
We're in Virginia right now.
In Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, you certainly are the subject of many, many, many pages and books now by Ray Fowler. And so I guess we would ask you to first describe, as best you can, your own words, the latter experience, the big experience that you consciously remember without the aid of hypnosis.
Well, the very first conscious memory I had was of the 1967 encounter, and I was at home with my 7 children. My mother and father were there with me, and suddenly the lights went out, and there was a reddish-orange pulsating light in the backyard. It was coming through the pantry window, and as I said, there was silence, and beings entered my home. And from there, we went into the living room, and there was an exchange of books. That was my first conscious recall of a UFO encounter.
Was that fully conscious? In other words, you weren't saying, I've got to pinch myself, am I dreaming, am I asleep?
No, that was fully conscious.
Fully conscious.
Mm-hmm.
Such an encounter would, well, of course you never know until it happens, I suppose, but I would think I would be stiffened with fear.
Well, my faith helped me there. Without my faith, I think that I probably would have passed out, but I expect them to be angels entering my home.
Mm-hmm. You are a devout Christian?
Yes.
Are you still a devout Christian?
Yes, I am.
What do you think these beings represented?
Well, for me, I believe that they represent more in our spiritual realm, even though they are in the physical also. Man is made of body, soul, and spirit, and we deal primarily with our physical being, and once in a while with our emotional and soul part of our being. But our spiritual part, we somehow have eliminated, and this is the whole person, body, soul, and spirit. And I believe now we are coming to a point where the spirit, our spirit, is going to have to open up and recognize who we really are. And these beings are coming to the forefront for us to realize who we really are.
Dr. Fowler, Raymond Fowler said that he thinks they're trying to get us a message with regard to the way we're treating Earth.
Most definitely, yes.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
I will ask you what I asked him. Why, if that is the case, if there is a symbiotic relationship between wherever they are, another dimension or space or planet or whatever, and here, and that relationship is a critical one for them, as if we foul where we are, in some way they are fouled, then why take such a circumnavigating route to try and get the message to us through Betty, through anybody else? Why not land on the White House lawn and simply let the message out?
Well, I don't think that they deal in I think they want man to still have his free will and choice. And this is why I believe they are visiting the thousands of people all over the world. And as far as landing on the White House lawn, I don't think they're interested in just the political scene.
All right. Your husband, Bob, is here, and I've left him out so far. Bob, how long have you two been married?
Since 1978.
78.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about all of this that has happened? I mean, you've been with Betty now all this time, a very famous abduction case, and I'm sure you've talked to her for many, many hours and long moments and short moments about all of this. What have you concluded?
Well, originally I had several of my own abduction experiences before I met her. And I am basically a nuts and bolts type person.
Mm-hmm.
I had to admit to the physical reality of the phenomena when I saw and experienced what I did in 1967 also before I met her. I had a lot of trouble in accepting the spiritual aspect of the phenomena because I basically, my mind said it was very hard for me to understand.
Are you a religious person?
I am now a Christian, yes. However, at the time I met Betty, I had no particular religion and hadn't had for probably 25 years.
Well, you know, it's funny, this is for either one or both of you, but Christians who listen to the kind of show that I'm doing right now and the kind of thing that you're saying right now become greatly offended, generally become greatly offended, and they say these people are being fooled, these beings, or whatever it is they call them, are certainly not from God. They are, if anything, from the devil. Mm-hmm. You're tampering with forces and things that you know not.
Mm-hmm.
How do you two react to that?
Well, I mean, you know, each person can make up their own mind, and I realize that the Christian, many of the Christian people have a view that they are demonic. However, if they really studied the Word of God, they would see that also the good is visiting us. I mean, the angelic beings are still speaking to mankind. It did not end at the New Testament.
So what we're getting now, then, is a continuation of instruction from the New Testament?
I think that God continues to speak to us. Of course, the Christian view, where Jesus finished all things, I believe this. Yes, he has finished all things, but it does not mean that the spiritual and physical has ended, where we do not have communication with the angelic host.
What can you describe for us, Betty, as best you're able to, what these creatures looked like?
Well, the tall elders are have white hair, very pale skin, pale blue eyes, high cheekbones, and they were in white robes, did not have any shoes on at all. And the smaller ones, which they said were watchers, were about 3 to 5 feet tall, had very large heads, gray skin, and had very large black eyes. I was later told by the elders that these gray watchers were their remote imaging surrogates, and they were connected to them through bioelectric mind projection.
So in other words, these are a combination of biological, they're beings and machines.
They're right. They're spiritual and physical. And I think that the grays are being used by the elders, perhaps because of the pollution on Earth or the ultraviolet light I think that they are using them to do the particular work of watching the earth and mankind, because the watchers did say that they were caretakers of nature in all natural forms.
Did you see the Roswell crash film, Betty?
Yes, I did.
Did you see any creature that looked like that?
Well, it was similar, but the beings that I have been involved with were slightly different. They were not as thin and willowy as those. They were more, I'd say more like a child, but a robust child.
In what manner did they communicate to you?
That was through mental telepathy, through the mind. But the elders spoke directly to me.
As in out loud?
Pardon?
As in out loud?
Yes. Yes.
Was there any specific message that they wanted you to bring back? I understand there were some experiments performed on you, medical experiments?
Mm-hmm. The watchers said that man would become sterile, and with the population explosion, you wonder, well, how could that possibly be? But there has been a lot of information collected by the medical field that is showing that.
I know.
You know, yeah.
There's a New Yorker magazine article, as I told Raymond, suggesting that the sperm count in man is dropping worldwide at a pace that, should it keep up, will go to zero within one generation.
Mm-hmm. And we see all the problems with the different viruses that is just running rampant and so forth. So, I mean, there is so much that is involved here. Also, the chemicals that have been used on our produce and everything, the ground is saturated by it, and that can be picked up in the DNA of the people from all over the world. It shows that what happens is the chemicals break down to estrogen, and it's causing a problem in possibly sterility in certain people.
Or perhaps in many people.
Mm-hmm.
That then may account for the... I'm always looking at motivation. Everybody tries to figure out what it is they're doing. Perhaps these experiments are designed to simply monitor the degree of deterioration in us. Could that be?
Yes, that's quite possible. The biopsies that are often, like scars, often seen on abductees,
mm-hmm.
It may be that they are checking what is going on in our system due to pollution and nuclear waste being emptied in the water or air.
Did you ever, during this whole process, doubt your own sanity?
Yeah. Yes, very often, because it was so fantastic what I was going through. And in the very beginning, I was very fearful of it. And one of the investigators came to me and said, I wanted to stop because it seemed like science fiction.
Mm.
And he pleaded with me not to stop because he wasn't supposed to say anything, but much of what I was experiencing was happening to people worldwide, and I had no knowledge of the UFO phenomena at the time.
Well, being a devout Christian, I would have guessed that you would have run to your church. Did you do that?
I ran to the Bible, and of course, I had been reading and studying the Bible for many years, and then when I realized that I was having these encounters, I asked Jesus, what is this? Why am I going through this? What is happening? And I began to look into a lot of the prophetic books and could see that the Ezekiel's wheel was quite possibly the dealing with the UFO phenomena, and many other parts in the Bible show that it is UFO connected.
Well, again, I take it you were and probably are now church going?
Well, at this point, we have just moved from Connecticut to Virginia, and there is a church we are looking into going to.
Well, what I'm curious about is how other Christians your friends, your associates, so forth, reacted to your story, which is now world famous, and so everybody knows it?
Well, most of the people that we've come in contact with, Christians, they've been very nice. I have hundreds of letters from other Christians that write to me and tell me about their experiences, but they dare not speak them out loud in the church or even sometimes to the minister.
That's interesting. Did the elder group that spoke with you tell you what was going to happen, or just what was going to happen if we didn't straighten out, or how much information did you actually get from them?
Well, the elders told me that they were masters of rings, cycles, and orbs, and that they were ambassadors of O. Now, this is hard to explain. I really couldn't understand everything that they were telling me. However, at one point of an experience that both Bob and I had, and this was in Meriden, Connecticut, we had a small cottage. At one point, we recalled a whirring sound over our bedroom, and it seemed as if Bob did a doppelganger. In other words, he was in two places at one time. And he was at the bed and taking off his socks. I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth, and suddenly when the whirring started, I turned around to look at him, and as I did, he came out of himself. He was in two places at one time, rushed to the door, stood there, and looked astonished, turned around, and went back into himself. And we discussed it just a short period of time and then let it go. Well, it was years later under regressive hypnosis. We thought that was it. And years later under hypnosis, we realized, more information came out, that we were taken out of our bedroom and up into a craft. And at that point, a very unusual thing happened where I turned into a light being and there were other light beings there. And at that point, Bob was taken on another side of the craft and I could see him. There were two elders standing side by side on both sides of him. And they took him into another room. And this time when we went under regressive hypnosis, Bob recalled certain information, and there were messages in that he might be able to tell you.
Bob, did you recollect it roughly the way she has just explained it?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Exactly. I just thought it was a very strange incident until undergoing regressive hypnosis. But the thing is, this was the particular incident that made me open my eyes to the spiritual aspect of the whole phenomena, because I did see Betty change into where the color just drained out of her, and she became what I call a white being, in other words, the form of a human being, but having no distinct features. You could see almost through her as the others that were on the other side of the craft with her.
All right, Bob and Betty, hold it right there. We'll be back to you both after the break here at the bottom of the hour. Betty and Reese and Luca and her husband Bob back in a moment from the high desert. You're listening to Dreamland. I'm Art Bell. That occurred during my program last week. I've got another one for you now. Not quite as big, but certainly a strange place. A 6.4 earthquake has just occurred in a remote region of the mid-Atlantic Ocean. The quake centered about 500 miles northwest of Ascension Island along the mid-Atlantic Ocean ridge. That's absolutely incredible, and it is a place there ought not be an earthquake, but they just had it. And they show it roughly between the jutting edge of South America and Africa. It is a remarkable place for an earthquake to have occurred. And by the way, the follow-up information on the 8.2 is that there were many people killed. Dozens of people were killed, and an island was just about flattened. And the regular media began to finally catch up with that story about a day late and millions of dollars short. Betty and Bob back in a moment. For the past several months, everybody at, oh, by the way, check them out on the internet at www.maxinet.com/UFO News. Hope you got that address. They're hard to get. All right, back now to Betty and Bob, Luca, and hi to you both again.
Hello.
And Bob, I think you were saying you saw your wife turn into pure light.
Right, and I'm gonna run through this rather quickly. What happened was she was on the opposite side of the graph, and she had joined a group of people with these light beams. And it looked to me like they were playing a game, throwing back geometrical form, rolling up into a ball of light, and so forth. The next thing I knew, a door had opened behind me, and there were two tall beings that took me into a room and began to impart information to me. First off, I was told that the people on the other side were going through a learning process to advance their knowledge on another plane, that I was not there because I was not advanced enough spiritually, and I'll fully agree to that. That it was a privilege for me even to be there. From this point, I was given information regarding the spirit. I was told, and again, this is a very brief version, that the spirit transcends time and dimension. The ultimate goal is to come closer and closer to the Creator. That our life experience is recorded from birth to death, including our deepest feelings and emotions, as well as our physical activities. That illness, sorrow, and distress actually serve a purpose in the larger order of things that is not readily apparent to those of us on this plane of existence. And that evil, and this was a surprise, that evil, although the negative aspect on the earthly plane is necessary and again serves a purpose. Now, this might be oversimplifying it, but basically we're all given a free will by the Creator. And all of us have the ability to do good or evil. It's our choice. Now, here's another thing that I was told that mankind are advancing rapidly as far as technology, but are developing far behind spiritually. And they said that we are developing things that are harmful to ourselves, as well as our home planet.
Right.
And one thing that comes to mind, I'm sure many of your listeners are familiar with, is Project HARP.
I did, as a matter of fact, the show I did Friday night, Saturday morning, was with Dr. Nick Begich, and we spent 5 hours on Project HARP, so yes.
Okay, I have one question regarding Project HARP. Now, they're playing with the ionosphere, and if they are wrong, if they misjudge and destroy the ionosphere, that can adversely affect every human being on Earth. My question is, what gives them, or any government, the right to even think of experimenting with it?
I have no idea. We spent a lot of time on that exact question Saturday morning, and I have absolutely no idea. It's not just there either. We're experimenting genetically. For example, there was in San Francisco recently, announced after the fact, a young man with AIDS was given a baboon's immune system, or they tried to anyway. Mm-hmm. And I have great compassion for those with AIDS, but I would have liked, it's kind of like they gave us a story and they said, well, here's what we've done. Yes, there may be repercussions for mankind should a disease be transferred, but we think the risk is minimal. Well, I wish somebody had asked me before they did it.
Exactly.
In the long run, we all pay for it one way or another.
Well, that's right. And there's another concern I've got. There's something going on in this world now, summing it briefly, that I call the quickening. And you heard the earthquake report I just read.
Right, yes.
And the big earthquake in Indonesia, the big one north of Japan before that. Something is arguably going on.
Well, I think it is something to do also with the HARP project, even though they say no, it isn't. I think that the extremely low frequencies they're sending out are getting into the electromagnetic sphere that surrounds our Earth, and already a portion of the Antarctica has broken away some time ago.
Yes.
So, and I think the scalar waves caused by this are probably entering the magnetic poles and going down into the core and causing a lot of the eruptions on the Earth.
Well, let me tell you, Dr. Begich said that he has got a document which says that NASA was able to detect a symbiotic relationship during the large Alaskan earthquake in the ionosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you think that one over a little bit, and then you begin considering shooting a hole in or heating up the ionosphere, I don't know if it sounds like such a good idea.
Right.
No, it causes a lot of strange storms, and also a lot of electrical storms where people are seeing bright lights and so forth. I think this is being caused not by the UFO phenomena, but because of the HARP project.
And also, they mentioned that with Project HARP, they could use it to bounce X-rays off the ionosphere into the Earth to see if enemy countries are hiding below the surface of the Earth.
That's right.
Nuclear weapons and so forth. So my question again is, what happens to the people that happen to be standing between the surface of the Earth and the ionosphere?
That's exactly the question I asked Saturday morning. In other words, to get into the Earth, it's got to pass through us.
Right. And we resonate at 8 hertz, and these extremely low frequencies can cause even death. Can cause cancer, can cause the mind to, go haywire.
Be
so,
confused,
I mean,
yes.
it really is extremely dangerous.
Well, you would think that as we get closer to Project HARP cranking up the really big power, or other conditions worsen, the incidence of warnings or messages from those people that talk to you would increase. In other words, they would become increasingly concerned as we keep going in the wrong direction.
That's right.
I think that has been happening by the number of new people that you see entering the phenomena that are finally coming forth and telling their stories that are well documented by credible people. I think you are seeing more and more of that.
Do people tend to come to you with their stories?
Yes, they do, because they can't talk to anyone else. And I have thousands of letters. So does Ray Fowler have boxes and boxes of letters from people all over the world describing their encounters and experiences which they cannot talk to their family or their clergy or anyone. They feel as if they'd be ridiculed. And because we have experienced these things, they have written to us and told us about them. At least it gets off their chest.
And many of these people are highly credible. They can be doctors, psychiatrists, military. I've spoken personally to people from every branch of the military, Air Force, Marines, Army, that have had experiences and so forth, and they can't really put their name to a statement because, for obvious reasons, there goes pension, jail, whatever.
Sure. Oh, no, it ruins reputations, and if you've got a position, if you're a pilot, for example, you dare not report a UFO.
That's right.
Pilots just don't do that. Even sometimes with everybody in the cockpit having seen it, and they still will not report it. And I cannot say I blame them. Now, Raymond Fowler is doing a lot of research that is beginning to go down a kind of a different avenue that melds together the physical abduction experience with NDEs, or near-death experiences, with many similarities. Would you agree with that? Do you think he's on the right track?
Yes, I do. I think that, again, it is the spiritual part of our being, and every one of us are going to face that at the time of our demise.
Apparently some of us prior to as well.
That's right. That's right. And I think that being brought back is allowing people to see that there is life after death.
Do you have any guesses about its form?
Pardon?
Do you have any guesses or information about its form? That, in other words, after death, do you think that we will meet with the elders? Do you think we will see these people, or do you think it will be an entirely, perhaps the soul just taking a different road?
Well, I think that positively there will be light, and I believe that Christ will be there for us.
Do you think that Christ and God preside over worlds of beings?
Most definitely. And I believe that Christ is within every person that is born. The Lord says in the Word of God that the light is within each person that is born on earth. So I believe that each one of us have the Christ present. However, it's what we choose that either allows the Lord to live within us or die.
What sort of challenge did you go through mentally, Betty, trying to fit all this together, your devout Christianity, with this experience that would seem for many to conflict with it?
I had a very difficult time at first, especially because of family and friends, they being Christian also. But it was happening to me. I had to face it, and as I said, it was difficult. And I, of course, went to the Word of God and looked upon Jesus' words that he said, greater things shalt thou do than I have done. And it's hard to imagine how we could have greater things happening to us than that, what our Lord has gone through. Also, a lot of the Christians feeling that this phenomena is demonistic, they must realize the opposite side is still there, which is the angelic host.
Sure.
And both are at work for their master.
Without some change in direction, do you have any idea how long it will be before some catastrophic event sort of does a reset the way you do when you push a reset button on your computer?
Well, a lot of people are feeling the year 2000, but I don't feel that. I feel that we will go through a lot of troublous times and a lot of terrible things with wars, of course, like the Word of God has said, wars and rumors of wars and upheavals and weather conditions and so forth, all before it happens. But I don't feel as if any person can name the day or hour that it will finally be finished.
Well, we certainly have been having strange weather. You moved from Connecticut to Virginia, and
Yes.
I'm sure Virginia this year probably feels like Connecticut.
It does this year.
I think we took it with us.
Exactly.
We need to go further south or west.
Well, you'd have to go a ways because they had freeze well down into Florida.
Yeah.
And my mom lives on out at the end of Long Island, and they have never seen a winter like this.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, has it begun?
Well, I think that it has been all the troubles that have been happening all over the world. It already has begun, yes, these last times and troublous times, but I don't feel as if the end is going to happen like many people have been predicting in the year 2000 because our calendars are just not that accurate.
All right. One of you, I think it was you, Bob, said something earlier about there being a reason for humans to suffer.
Right.
Now, there are many people with very debilitating, painful diseases that are terminal.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had discussions with people close to me that I love, not because I have a terminal disease, just as an academic discussion.
Yeah.
And I've said, you know, if I had a terrible, terrible terminal disease, why, I just might take the easy way out.
Mm-hmm.
And this person who will go unnamed said, oh, no, you're meant to go through that. You must.
That's right.
You must go through that.
That's exactly correct.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Okay, it's like, how can I put it? In other words, as I said, everything is recorded. And as far as pain, sorrow, and distress, if you're looking at it from the earthly viewpoint, from our viewpoint,
Right.
this is, my God, this is terrible.
Right.
If you're looking at it from the big, I hate to use the term, but the big picture, okay?
That's fine.
What it is a testing of the spirit, of the will, and this will advance you in the next plane. Although it's hard to look at here when you're hurting real bad, you know.
And not only that, it is all the people and family involved with the individual that might be going through a terrible time. It might be those people, it's their time to pray for them or look after them. It may not only be the person that is suffering, but those around them that have lessons to learn from them. And love especially. Love is the greatest of all. And what is so sad today, there are so many children and adult children that have their parents in rest homes where really they should take that responsibility themselves.
one of the things I think with our whole society in particular is people over the years have forgotten how things have gotten too easy, and people have forgotten how to be responsible for themselves and their actions. And this, in the long run, is very important.
On balance, as you two look at humankind's progression or deterioration, depending on how you look at it, are we beginning to correct the path we're on, or do you think, and I've used this metaphor so many times, that like the airplane that's halfway across the Atlantic, it goes past the point of no return? Do you think the little red light in the cockpit that says point of no return has already come on?
Well, my wife and I think, differ on this. As mankind as a whole, I don't think that we're going to make it. I think that small numbers will, but I really don't. As mankind as a whole, no. I think that we're too greedy.
So the little red light's on. And Betty, I take it you're half full glass on that.
Well, I feel that there will be many that will show that love, that will find the truth and the light and the Lord, and will help so many different people. And in the UFO phenomenon, there are many people that are feeling, because the reason for their abduction or encounter is because in the latter days that they will come together and they will be able to help others. I believe also that, like Bob said, the greed is there, and this is why a lot of governments all over the world, they're interested in the military, power. It's such a power struggle, and this is half of our problem.
And yet, at the individual single level, how does Betty or how does Bob affect what the governments do? It seems impossible. And I hate to agree with Bob, and I hate to be negative, but I think that it's gone too far, and I think whatever's going to come next, I'm not saying it's the end of the world, but whatever's going to come next is going to come.
Well, there's going to be changes, that's for certain. But there are also people. Now, a lot of people feel, the breakdown of the government and everything, but this would be a terrible thing because there are some good people in government. It's just that the general populace has got to get more involved, and I know a lot of people feel as if, well, what's the use of voting? We can't do anything about it because a lot of them already have their men in place and everything for what they want to do with the one worlders and so forth. But we can't give up like that. Well, we have to fight for the truth.
That's a wonderful, cheerful point in which to end it. Even though Bob and I basically agree. I want to thank you both for being with us.
Thank you very much for having us.
Okay, take care.
Okay, you too. God bless you.
Bye-bye now.
And you as well. That's Betty Andreessen Luca and her husband Bob. And I would guess that would be one of the most famous abduction stories documented. It's in Raymond Fowler's books, culminating in The Watchers 2, available now, bookstands everywhere. So there you've got it, ladies and gentlemen. There's the story laid out in front of you by Raymond Fowler and the abductee herself. We'll be back with more. This is Dreamland. Now comes Bud Hopkins, who should be familiar to all of you who listen to the programming that I do. He is author of Intruders, Witnessed, Missing Time. He is a remarkable man who has been in this field deeply and is respected by most everybody in it as one of its leaders. So here is Bud Hopkins. Bud, welcome.
Well, I'm glad to be with you, Art.
I guess, the first thing before we get off into what we're going to do, Bud, I'd like to ask you your reaction since you heard Linda Moulton Howe's report. What do you feel about all of this?
Well, I mean, it certainly is ominous to hear the ravenous encroachments really into the coral reefs, which are essential to the ecology of the atolls, many areas in the ocean. It really sounds pretty horrible. The idea that a third might be completely gone in a few years, and the idea that she mentioned that This may have to do with too many septic tanks too close to the water's edge in Florida in particular. Again, I think it reminds us of the fact that overpopulation is just going to be a disaster to us. And I was thinking with some dismay of the fact that the Pope was just here in the United States preaching against birth control, which I find shocking when one considers what's happening to the ecology of the world.
I could not agree more. And, of course, as you pointed out, I think, on the phone before the show, he's about to go to Mexico, where he is going to preach, indeed, there pretty much to the choir, very much a Catholic nation. And I don't know where all of this is headed for us, but I sense there's a reckoning coming. I can't shake loose of the fact that last week a caller called me and said, hey, Art, you know what's happening? Earth is getting mad at us. And I said to the caller, no, I don't think Earth gets mad at us or angry. I think that Earth gets... And by that I mean that nature finds an imbalance if we create one and finds a way, eventually, to correct the balance.
And that may be true. And, of course, whenever you look at something like a mountain range, I was in Italy with my wife last summer, and we saw a giant cliff that had obviously split in half, a scarp, a mountain escarp. And you could see the various strata. This must have been a quarter of a mile high, as if the entire thing had split apart. So there was maybe a distance of a quarter of a mile between the two halves of this very high mountain. And you realize that happened at some point not terribly long ago in terms of geological history. You realize that the Earth has always gone through incredible convulsions. Mm-hmm. And I think we sort of get ourselves lulled into believing that all the lakes are going to be the same height and all the water is going to be the same purity and everything is going to, the animal life is going to remain pretty much the way it is. It never has, and I think it's changing now. And of course, with this overpopulation we have and the toxic waste that are being dumped and so forth, I think it's speeding up. But I think we're always wrong to assume that nature is stable. It really isn't.
I couldn't agree more. Our weather is obviously undergoing some sort of profound change, be it short-term or long-term. We as short-term mortals don't really have a way of judging that, but obviously our weather is changing, and that seems to be part of it. Right. And I guess in some ways we can sort of jump from the present condition of the planet, parent condition, to the intruders, to whoever might be here, and whether there might be some correlation between the visitations we're getting and what we're doing to the planet. Any thoughts on that?
Well, there may well be. One of the problems is instead of having people like me for you to be interviewing, if you had the chief UFO occupant to talk to and could get a straight answer, we might know the answer to some of those questions. We really don't know is the bottom line.
Well, if you can arrange that interview for me,
I'll give it a shot. But I think that it's very easy for us to take all kinds of earthly fears and hopes, and this is a theme I've talked about a great deal, and ascribe them to alien motives.
Sure.
I mean, when we think of the vast number of movies that have shown alien invaders coming down and blowing up the White House and everything else, I would say the basic science fiction mode is to show the UFO occupants as being sort of cosmic stormtroopers or something. There is absolutely no evidence for that whatsoever in the case material. It's interesting, Art, when I think about it, at my advanced age, I've been at this for 24 years, and I've interviewed, I've worked one-on-one with something like 650 people reporting abduction experiences, and Lord knows how many other people I've interviewed and how many books I've read and lectures I've attended and so forth. But through none of this, really, do we have any iota of evidence suggesting some kind of alien malevolence. But on the other hand, I don't see any evidence whatsoever of alien helpfulness. They seem to be playing the game their way, holding the cards very close. They do what they seem to have to do, and nobody really knows what the ultimate purpose of this is going to be, what's going to turn out to be.
There are many people who think the animal mutilations, the cattle mutilations, and the rest of it may be a form of environmental monitoring. And when you consider the possibilities, our government does not need to go into a farmer's field in the middle of the night and cut up a cow.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think that, one of the funny things about the sort of paranoid edge that people have when they look at some of these things is they tend to assume the enemy or the government or whatever it is that they're thinking about is practically infallible. Every paranoid ascribes to the enemy almost whoever the enemy is, almost unimaginable powers. And, for instance, as you just said with the animal mutilations, here we've had thousands of mutilated animals, and I've run into a number of cases that are clearly connected with abductions. And, of course, so is Linda. In her work, Linda Howe, the idea that somehow the government is running around in the dead of night and running into farmers' fields and leaving no footprints and doing this is just ridiculous. They could do it in a laboratory under a controlled environment if they had to.
Precisely.
And it's just as an example, I was attending a very interesting party last night. It was a 96th birthday party for Alex Imich, who is quite a wonderful student of parapsychology and a friend of mine. This was at Ingo Swan, so it was quite an interesting gathering.
Oh, Ingo, yes.
Yeah, and the thing was, I was talking to somebody who said he had some abduction experiences, and he said the government sent 5 black helicopters over and hovering over his house the next day. And this has happened again and again. And I said, well, what do you think the government is doing that for? And he said, well, they're trying to intimidate me. And I said, well, are you intimidated? He said, no, he wasn't intimidated. He was angry. And I asked him why he really thought the government would spend all that money to get these helicopters fueled up and piloted and send them over his house to sit there. Absolutely no effect on his behavior whatsoever, except to maybe make him go public with it. It doesn't make any sense. It's, again, an imagining of government power and expense and so forth. And I said, if we have 30 or 40, 50,000 people abducted every night, let's just say, I'm making up numbers here, I think I have 150,000 helicopters to divide it up to fly over people's houses with the hope that somebody's intimidated. Right. It doesn't work that way.
No.
I think it's a part of the UFO phenomenon, actually. And I think the cattle mutilation is, too, as a phenomenon.
Boy.
Incidentally, not to run this into the ground, but it's an interesting thing that I think every UFO researcher has realized, and that is that in many cases, it seems the UFO occupants leave behind some kind of image or memory or something, almost designed to really fix this in the memory of the witness or the abductee, instead of trying to conceal it, trying to make them remember. And I was dealing with a man who was on a hiking trip in Spain, and he has probably had abduction experiences based on a lot of other things he told me, but he was taking a walk out into a rural village, and he said in the middle of this field, as he looked over, he saw a man walking across the field in a silk hat and tails and a white tie.
Oh, my.
This is in rural Spain. And he looked at the man and he thought, well, it must be a magician going out on a gig. He's got a job somewhere. He couldn't imagine what in the world this man was walking across the field. And he looked away, and when he looked back a second later, the man had vanished, and there were no trees or anything to hide behind. He just was gone. And he felt very uneasy, and when he came back to his inn where he was staying, he had lost some time. Now, if that experience was an abduction, and it might have been, I mean, I have no way of knowing that, but based on a lot of other things I've learned about this individual, who was a physicist, incidentally, it may have been. It's almost as if the aliens were saying, well, what can we possibly show this man to make him remember what happened to him? And whether it's a guy in a silk hat or a black helicopter or whatever, I do think that there are lots and lots of signs given just to really ingrain the memory in the person's conscious mind. If something unusual happened, and I don't know why they do that.
Oh, boy. Yeah, I have no idea what to make of all of this, and I guess after all the years that you've been involved, you're still scratching your head to some degree as well.
Right. This is where we have to pick this up, I think. That we know now a great many things about what happens to human beings in these experiences. When I first started doing research in this back in the middle 70s, I discovered things like the screen memory situation. And
do you want to explain to people what that is?
I'll explain what this is. Well, I'll give you a very graphic example. A woman was driving home, and she had some odd experiences in her childhood, but she did not connect this following experience with UFOs until much later on. But she was driving home, and she said this cow came over to her car. This is at night. And the cow looked in the window of the car and had big soulful eyes. And the cow ran alongside the car, staring in the window, and she was going about 45 miles an hour. It was obviously a thoroughbred cow. And all of a sudden, the cow wasn't there, and she got home very late. Well, she didn't see a cow looking in the window of her car, that's for sure. But it's as if in a UFO abduction experience, a person can be made to see something. This is played in on the brain from the outside. And maybe this is something which will make the person remember the experience consciously, at least the unusual quality of it. Or maybe it's a way of concealing the fact that this wasn't a cow, it was a little gray man with black eyes. And the screen memory, which is very, very common, another woman I was just dealing with recently was driving along, and at night an owl came down, a big owl, and its wings were folded. It wasn't flying. It came straight down, landed in front of her car. She had to stop, driving a Volvo. And she said the owl just stood in front of the car and stared at her over the hood of the Volvo. And she was convinced that they have very big owls in that part of Connecticut where she lives. Mm-hmm. Well, the screen memory is a way in which UFO occupants can handle and make people see something that's not there. And that's, of course, creates a big problem when you do research in this, because what a person consciously remembers may or may not be anything like what has actually happened.
How do you break through a screen memory? Can you take somebody into a deep state of hypnosis and break through that barrier?
Yes, that can be done, and that's one of the reasons why we use hypnosis and why it's extremely helpful. And actually, sometimes it's not at all infrequent that you can consciously deal with a person, I mean with a conscious, unhypnotized state, and ask a few questions, and the screen memory begins to crumble before your very eyes.
Interesting.
A quick example. Two young women driving home in a car from a party in the outskirts of Washington, D.C. came upon a 6-car pileup of wrecked cars. And there was no one in any of the cars, they remembered, and all the lights were on the cars, and there were no emergency vehicles or witnesses or anything, but there were 6 cars all piled up, and they got home and felt very odd about it, and then they got home quite late. And each one, not suspecting anything beyond a big wreck of cars, communicated with their parents by telephone. They were college kids, and when they called them, they said, gee, we saw the strangest thing last night, and reported the same story. But what happened is when they looked in newspapers for it, and they made some inquiries, there was no 6-car pileup. And I began asking questions such as, I said, well, did you stop to see if anybody was hurt?
Of course.
Well, no. Why not? Well, and they sort of looked at each other. Well, it was kind of spooky. I don't know. I said, well, I imagine that you stopped at the first telephone and you reported this accident in case somebody was lying on the floor of one of those cars bleeding.
Right.
No, didn't. I don't know. Well, why didn't you do that? Well, the more they began to examine the fact that their own behavior made no sense whatsoever.
To them.
To them, yeah. And also the fact that, I said, isn't it unusual that all the cars would be wrecked and have their lights on? Maybe one car would have lost its electricity or something in the wreck. And I said, was there a lot of traffic there? Because you don't get a 6-car pileup unless you got traffic. No, there was no car around. It was deserted. And every question I asked made them doubt that what they had seen was a 6-car pileup. And under hypnosis, separately, both women remembered a landed UFO, and it was actually an abduction. They had stopped. But the point is that the fact that they remembered both of them remembered exactly the same image, lets you know that this is not a self-generated false memory. What it is essentially is a memory that's imposed upon them from the outside.
Right. Let me stop you for a second. You said that each one of them then later, under hypnosis, recalled seeing a UFO.
Yeah, it was a landed UFO.
Now, that's very interesting because one great charge, of course, with the John McFair and all the rest of it is that there can be stings, there can be lies, there can be imagination injected into all of this, but for both of them to come up with the same story seems rather far-fetched.
Yeah, well, it's of course, one of the big false stories put out by debunkers that this is some kind of fantasy that takes place in a single head. Because I've got cases involving 7 people at once. They all remember abduction case. They all remember everything happening in the same way. And of course, the Ray Fowler's book, The Alien Abductions, which is an excellent book, dealt with 4 men who remembered everything exactly the same way under hypnosis in an abduction that took place in Maine. There isn't any doubt, though, that people can confabulate, and one has to be always very, very careful in their hypnotic technique to very subtly test the recollections of the people.
Well, with the multiple cases in mind, Bud, and all your years of study, have you come to an absolute conclusion about, if not the reality of everything we hear, which is ridiculous, but have you come to grasp sufficient proof to be able to say this really is what it appears to be, and that is, of course, abduction by others?
Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. One thing, Art, I never like to use the word proof. Proof is how much evidence it takes to persuade somebody that something is true. And evidently, for something like 15% of the population, they don't believe the Holocaust occurred.
I know.
Or that we ever walked on the moon.
Let's try this then. The reasonable man test. If you had to go into court and present evidence, could you compile sufficient evidence, in your opinion, to cause a jury to convict if it was that kind of a case?
Well, I certainly would hope so. Of course, so did the prosecutors in the O.J. Simpson case, too. Human beings are flexible.
Point well taken. All right, Bud, hold on. We're at the top of the hour. We'll take a break here. Bud Hopkins is my guest, and the subject is very, very serious this night. I'm Art Bell from an area near Dreamland. This is Dreamland.
The busier you are, the more you treasure it.
Ask about the sale on gold. All right, now it's back to Bud Hopkins. And Bud, here's a question that I've got for you. With all your years of research and with the environmental distress that we're having right now, it might be useful to try and understand the motive of the visitors. There are a lot of people in ufology who think that, yes, things are collapsing around our ears, and these guys are going to come down and save our asses. So it might be useful to know what you know about what their intentions are.
Well, Art, there doesn't seem to be any way we can talk about what their ultimate intentions are. I have to say there are, 1,000 theories. I don't think we can look to them necessarily to save our asses, as you put it. I don't think that we can do that. Although I fully understand the human need for us to want to think that.
Yes.
But you see, there isn't any doubt in my mind that UFOs have been flying around here for quite some time, and certainly in the 20th century, we have many, many sightings going back into just in the short term, going back to World War II. And yet I don't know of a single solitary Jewish man, woman, or baby saved from the Holocaust. I don't know that there was any intervention in trying to prevent the Allies from dropping the atomic bomb and killing so many Japanese people. I don't see any sense that there's been any kind of intervention on any level. So if you look back over past history, and you realize they've been here, but apparently have not done anything to alter things, that at least anything that we can see.
Then do we presume the prime directive, to use a Star Trekism?
Right. Yeah. Well, that's obviously a rationale, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there's any truth to it, or that, for instance, in the prime directive, that they necessarily would try to help the environment either and intervene there. I don't really know. I just haven't seen any signs of it. And I certainly obviously join others in hoping that there will be some kind of help. But it seems to me they're very single-minded about what they are doing with human beings, and it doesn't seem to involve the environment. Also, something to remember is many times when UFOs have landed, in the cases that I dealt with, for instance, in my book Intruders, when the craft landed and sat on the ground for a short time, the soil was kind of baked into a rock-like hardness and really became almost sterile and wouldn't support life. So it isn't as if we're getting wonderful, lush greenery under one UFO. We're getting almost the opposite. I wish we got greenery instead. So I don't see any signs of it, although, obviously there's no reason to give up hope.
Do you make any best guesses about what their motives are? What is your best guess?
My basic theory, which I presented in Intruders, and it's certainly been, I would say, accepted by the majority of abduction researchers, is that they have reached some kind of evolutionary dead end and need our DNA to revivify their own species.
God, I'm beginning to wonder if that wouldn't be the blind leading the blind.
Well, it might be, but
from a DNA point of view.
The interesting thing is that we have now, in terms of the writings of a lot of futurists, the sense that with cyberspace and the net and so forth, as time goes on, our brains should expand, according to the evolutionists, and our bodies will become less muscular, less physical, really, less sexual, that as our genetic engineering is refined and in vitro fertilization becomes common and so forth, everything would point to the idea that we might be moving in that direction ourselves. And it's possible that if they have a 100,000-year start on us, they might have found themselves in some point where they need the primitiveness, really, of human sexuality, of human emotions, of human physical vigor and so forth. And therefore, in coming here and taking our DNA and setting up some kind of a breeding experiment, creating a hybrid mix, they may be attending to their own problems. That may also ultimately help us in some way, too. We don't really know. But I think that that seems to be the absolute dead center of this.
But I've heard from a number of researchers that, and I have interviewed women who claim to have been abducted, impregnated, and then at a later time shown what they were either told or assumed to be their children.
Absolutely.
How common is that?
It's extremely common. I would say that the vast majority of abductees that I've worked with have recalled, either consciously or under hypnosis, some kinds of procedures inside the UFO which involved removing, apparently, ova and certainly removing sperm, and these artificial inseminations taking place. This is not sexual activity, it's reproductive activity. So it's sterile.
I understand.
And they're later shown their purported offspring. Now, this is, of course, what I presented in Intruders, and I think until then we were floundering around to try to figure out why they were doing this, and particularly why they were doing something that I had written about in Intruders, which was picking up people from in childhood and then going back and targeting them again and again as if there's something about that person's development which is important and interesting to the UFO occupants. There's certainly everything about this that would suggest a long-range, long-term genetic breeding experiment, actually. And we have no idea what that is leading to. Various people have different theories, and David Jacobs has spelled out a very, very cogent and rather frightening theory, which he said he profoundly hopes is not true, about what the future holds. But they seem to be absolutely single-mindedly set on that.
If David Jacobs is correct, then we ought to be shooting at them, shouldn't we?
Well, it's a very ambiguous thing. Somebody said, well, maybe you have to interpret this as tough love, on their part. And I said, well, if they're doctors here to fix up the species on the planet, I said, I don't like the bedside manner.
Right.
The point is that...
and then there's another point, and maybe we are shooting at them. There's some very interesting footage. STS-48 and on shows some pretty weird things going on in space. And this brings us to, let me ask you about this, Bud. It's important. Mm-hmm. Do you believe that, A, our government is aware of the intruders, and B, there's, of course, the conspiracy theory that our government has made some kind of deal with the intruders?
Well, the answer to one is there's, to me, no doubt that they know about this.
All right.
I have absolutely no doubt about that, and I think that actually Roswell is probably only one of a number of UFO crashes. So I think the hardware is there, and I don't have any reason to doubt that whatsoever. So some branch of the government, probably a very, very small, carefully selected branch, is very aware of this, and there is a cover-up. As to whether or not there's been some kind of deal made, I don't think so. And basically, the reason I don't is because it seems to me that they can do pretty much whatever they want to do. They hold the cards in their hands, the UFO occupants. And I don't think, I used to have this amused image back in following that particular theory situation, back in the days of Bush and Dan Quayle, that I had an image of a little gray guy with a clipboard standing with big black eyes in Dan Quayle's office and saying, here, we got a list of 2-year-olds in New Jersey we want to abduct, and we got some insurance salesmen in Long Island and so forth. And if you'll sign off on these, we'll take them and get your permission, and we'll give you something in exchange, and as if they had to do that. But
here's something to think about. Go back further. Go back to Jimmy Carter, who had his own experience.
Right.
Jimmy Carter, who once, when confronted by one of my listeners who was standing in front of him with a book, he had a book, and Jimmy Carter was autographing it for him, and he said, President Carter, you told us when you ran for office you would tell us what was known about UFOs when you got into office. And he stopped cold and he looked up, because a lot of times when you're at book signings, you just sit there and sign and sign and sign. You hardly even ever look up.
Right.
Jimmy Carter looked up at him, and there was a tear in his eye, and he just stopped. Then there's Reagan, who 3, 4, was it 5 times, said, what if our Earth was forced to unite against an enemy from out there? That's what Reagan said. Now,
right, and plus I believe he had a UFO sighting himself.
Yes.
And,
in other words, were the presidents close to this information? Were the presidents informed, or is it some off-the-shelf, in-the-basement operation outside of government, elected?
Well, Art, frankly, I don't know the answer to that. And one of the reasons I think we've made a great deal of progress in understanding this whole crazy business is that we followed Alan Hynek's suggestion, which was to specialize. And I specialized in UFO abductions. I was talking to Linda Howe once, and she was, of course, specializing in animal mutilations. And I said, well, I don't get many dead cows on 16th Street between 7th and 8th Avenues in Manhattan.
Right.
So it's very hard for me to deal with that subject. When it gets to government cover-up and who's doing what, I have enough information, and some of it from case material that I've looked into, including one UFO crash, which is an extremely interesting case. It's not yet been made public. But I have enough information to have no doubt that the government, some branch thereof, has picked up the pieces, so to speak. Whether or not Jimmy Carter knows, or Reagan knew, and so on, or Bill Clinton, I have no idea whether this is some sort of self-contained thing.
Well, thank you for mentioning Bill Clinton. He one of the first instructions, in fact, the first instruction he gave was to find out two things. Who killed Kennedy? Mm-hmm. And whether there really is anything, what knowledge we have about UFOs. Apparently, he was satisfied on neither point.
Right. Well, my guess is that this is so high up in its secrecy quotient, really, that probably some self-appointed or government-appointed some earlier time MJ-12 type of thing, type of organization. If it isn't MJ-12, there would have to be something like it. Might even feel empowered to conceal this from the president on the grounds that until something breaks in a dramatic way, that there's some sort of communication, or we know what the aliens' ultimate goals are, if we could trust them, that the president's kept uninformed. Who knows? We do know, for instance, and it's a historical fact, that Harry Truman had not been briefed on the atomic bomb as the Vice President of the United States until he succeeded Roosevelt after Roosevelt's death.
Good point.
In April '44. Nobody told him he was the vice president with a very sick president. He didn't know a damn thing about it. Now, this can show you how compartmentalized intelligence communities can get. And
you remember the movie Independence Day, right?
Yeah.
The second half of it I thought was pretty fanciful, but the first half of it I thought was very provocative because the aliens that came down didn't want to make a deal. They didn't want our resources. They didn't want our women. They didn't want anything except for us to be dead. And that struck me. Now, if that should happen to be the case, and information is being withheld, I don't know how warm and fuzzy I feel about that.
Well, I agree. None of us would feel warm and fuzzy about that. I think, actually, Art, when I examine my conscience, I know that if I felt people were dying at the hands of the aliens or something like that, if there were deaths, if there were things a great deal worse than what happens to people, and what happens to people under abductions, I think of as I think you would call it collateral damage. In other words, it's not intended. It's very much like when one of our rockets hits a hospital instead of an anti-aircraft battery in Iraq. We didn't mean to blow up the hospital. It's collateral damage is the term. I don't think the aliens mean to cause problems, physical and psychological and emotional, though they do. But if I felt truly that they were deliberately out to do us in some way, and there were deaths and so forth, I think that I would be looking at the whole phenomenon very differently than I do. I would have an enormous rage and what I would be doing, but it doesn't seem to be that. And I must say, this is one of the reasons why the whole phenomenon is so puzzling to the people to whom it happens. Because as one man said to me, he was a pretty strong specimen and well-built, and he said, I couldn't move, and he said, I'm looking at these little people who had me paralyzed, and I could have knocked them, from here to kingdom come. But he said, I couldn't look at them as enemies because they weren't actually doing anything harmful to me. They were just staring at me. And he said, I couldn't look at them as friends either, and I didn't know where to put them. And my emotions were sort of flooding here and there, but they weren't focused in any particular way. And I think that that's one of the reasons people have such trouble dealing with this. They go with all kinds of different emotional rushes because there is no clear-cut signal coming through. We are here to hurt you. We are here to help you. We are enemies. We hate you. We are your friends. Those things don't come through. And I think when you read even something like, if you follow some of the abductees' various different positions at different times, I think Whitley Strieber being a very good example.
Yes.
He's gone everything from hating them and dread and terror and thinking they're wonderful and they're visitors and bouncing around because I think essentially no one is getting a clear signal from them.
His latest attitude is closer to David Jacobs, frankly. I think that he's beginning to have some rather severe reservations about their motives.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that I don't think anybody can be in this very long, and as I have been, and look at the damage that's definitely done to people psychologically. I mean, as an example, I got a phone call with a police lieutenant in New Jersey who has had these experiences, and he said that the humiliating thing is he can't go to sleep at night with without the covers pulled up to his eyes. And he's embarrassed because he has a wife and a child. The windows have to be closed. He has to have a gun there. I mean, now this is a man in his 40s, and you could multiply this by thousands of cases where people have been traumatized. I don't think deliberately on the part of the aliens, as I said, collateral damage, but the damage is very, very real. And there's no way that you can face this day after day and see the emotion people have put through and the trauma without being plenty angry and depressed about what might be the ultimate goal. We don't the ultimate resolution of this.
All right, but hold on. We're at the bottom of the hour. We'll be right back. And when we do come back, I want to talk a little bit about the New Age community. And again, reference the movie ID4. We'll be right back. This is Dreamland. Once again, Bud Hopkins. Bud, again, Independence Day, I recall the New Age community and the way they were depicted in ID4, where they all rushed to the top of the building and held up banners saying, welcome, and, of course, the bottom of the ship opened up and vaporized them. Now, in ufology right now, we have sort of a segment that's a New Age community segment mixed in with a hardcore ufologists.
Right.
And they're the ones who are liable to be thinking that our butts are going to get saved and that these people are gods, little g, or maybe even big G, and they're getting mixed up in ufology. How do you see that affecting things?
Well, I think that we have to, as close as possible, do something like science as we look into this. I mean, we really have to be as objective as we can, and we have to also recognize that bound up in every human being's brain is a whole range of fears and a whole range of hopes. Quasi-religious hopes and the feeling somebody's looking out for us out there, and fears that we're going to come to some horrible end. We have just simply got to train ourselves to keep that box of fears and that box of hopes out of the picture and to try to look at this as objectively as possible. And one thing I'd like to mention, because I realize we haven't really gone into some of the patterns of all this, but I would like to, if I could, suggest if anybody's interested in reading about the work I've done and the things that I've uncovered over the years, that I have 3 different books that you mentioned at the beginning, Intruders, Missing Time, and Witnessed, but they are available if somebody wants to call the Greenleaf Publications. There's an 800 number. All right. 1-800-905-8367. 905-8367. It's an 800 number, and they actually can take calls as we continue with the program because they're set up with operators to handle calls.
All right. We also have links on the website to each and every one of your books and your website and Amazon.com. All of that's on my website now, as people are used to. So if you want to go there, folks.
That's terrific, because I think that, if people have a chance to read the books, they can get a far more rounded picture. Obviously, we're sort of dipping in and out of a vast subject. Obviously, in my opinion, the most important subject that any human being could be talking about right now, actually. And one other thing, we are going to have for people in the New York City area or wherever, we're going to have a conference on April 10th with a number of people who have been guests of yours. Stanton Friedman is coming, yes. David Jacobs, myself, of course, Jerome Clark, Jerry Clark, who's edited this wonderful UFO encyclopedia, and Carol Rainey, who is doing a piece on at the conference on April 10th about how the media has responded to this. There's going to be a little bit of an inside story on the infamous NOVA program about abductions.
Yes.
She's a media person, and I will just give if anybody's interested in getting in touch with us about this information, there's a phone number here, 212-645-5278. And they can receive information. That's the Office of the Intruders Foundation. But it's going to be a one-day conference. I think it's going to be extremely helpful, just focused on the UFO issue, on the UFO abduction issue.
All right. Well, it sounds like a good group. I'm familiar with everybody. One other issue I want to ask you about, and that's ufology itself. Right now, it's sort of tearing itself to pieces. I see fights going on now, vitriolic fights over the internet and elsewhere, as I've never seen before. It's like there are paid disinformation agents or troublemakers out there right now. I've never, in all the years I've been covering this, I've never seen it as intense as it is right now. That must mean something.
Well, I think we have to thank the internet for making all of this possible. Because, 5 years ago, before people were busily logging on, if you were angry at somebody, you more or less sat home and stewed in your own juice or wrote a letter or something.
Sure.
But you couldn't make it public to the entire world in 2 seconds. And I think that has elevated I've often felt of the internet now as being like a giant newspaper that has 230 million columnists and 4 reporters, meaning that opinion is central and actual information is a little bit slower to follow behind, especially with a subject like this.
Well, there's a downside. Michael Crichton, I think it was Michael Crichton, wrote in one of his books that he had a concern about the internet, and that was that it is becoming so pervasive, so worldwide, that what we're going to end up with at the end of the day is no progress. We're going to end up with the top 10 ideas, and they're going to be the top 10 ideas in Bombay, in Moscow, in Washington, and everywhere else.
That may well be the case, but I think that if you have this plethora of information and theories and opinions and everything else, it makes it infinitely more difficult for an individual to sort things out. At least when you have, as in New York City, I have the New York Times, which most of the time does a very good job, I think, of sorting out the relevant from the irrelevant and so on, although there's some very, very large lacks, particularly in the handling of the UFO subject. But at least the major national, international news gets sorted out. But I think when you turn to the internet and you have everything under the sun available to you, you could just walk away staggered and confused. I don't know what the answer to this is. I'm not trying to say abolish the internet, but the point is that I think it's made it oddly more difficult for people to be clear about things than it was earlier.
We imagine, we talked about it a little while ago, the possibility of an off-the-shelf in-basement operation sort of managing all of this information right now. The internet, of course, would be an ideal place for any disinformation to be distributed and for any infighting to be instigated.
Yeah.
You agree?
Well, yes, except that because of the mass of stuff on the internet, I think it's harder for disinformation people to be dominant. In other words, they're only one more voice in a gigantic chorus.
One more, but consider, for example, the Kennedy assassination. If somebody who had the absolute truth about the Kennedy assassination walked to a podium and told the absolute truth on national television, we wouldn't, it would be one more conspiracy theory to put on the pile, unreachable already, of conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
And you'd never know the truth when you heard it.
Exactly. Well, that's why I say it makes things more difficult in a strange way. When you think about the way a peasant lived in 1620, going to bed when it got dark and waking up when the sun came up, and the range of choices that man had, that family had, the range of possible mates, the range of what that person could do with his life, the range is incredibly tiny. But now we're so expanded by the mobility, the new technology, the affluence of this country, and the internet and so forth, that we're just almost paralyzed with the range of possibilities. And I think, in a certain sense, what's probably a very good thing is that I think government handouts in general are less effective now. It's one reason why we have really, actually, I think, smaller government now than we did, say, under Dwight Eisenhower, where the government spoke with a stronger voice because there was very little else to listen to except the television news and the big newspapers. But now you've got so many voices talking, I think the government is less powerful than it was. It can be a disinformation agent operating as you've just described, could obviously create mischief, but I think much less mischief than what could have been created, say, in the Eisenhower era.
Okay, well, let's talk about a little mischief for a second. PBS has a well-respected program, a science program called NOVA. They did a show on abductions that not everybody who's listening right now may have seen. Tell them what happened, Bud, with NOVA.
Well, this was...
bearing in mind now that PBS is supported by the people and by our government.
Yeah. Well, the thing was that they came to me and wanted me to, in a certain sense, present new cases and it would be the feature of the program. I realized ultimately that I was the target. John Mack came in at the end as a second target, but I'm afraid I got the brunt of it. And
what did they say about you?
This is what they did. I said, let's avoid any cases that involve hypnosis because hypnosis is always attacked. Let's just deal with the cases where people remember things consciously.
Sure.
And as an example, we went to Florida to look into a case that I had never met the people, but I had received letters. They filmed interviews with these people talking about what they remembered consciously having happened, the abduction of their children. And the husband in this particular family described for the cameras how he was paralyzed. He went down. He was lying on the floor with the cameras filming him. He was paralyzed and trying to move a knee to hit the wall to wake up his wife because there were two aliens standing within 3 feet of him. And he could see at the end of the room a couple of other occupants floating his 4-year-old son out the window. And this was enormously dramatic, enormously moving. And it was all filmed. At some point, they asked me to do a hypnotic session with the mother of this little boy, the wife, to show something about hypnosis. So we did. And what they showed on the program, when they put it all together, they suppressed every single thing that was conscious recollection, including this dramatic scene, the most dramatic thing they filmed, of the husband on the floor. It was all suppressed, and they showed just a little piece of the hypnosis section and said something like, on the basis of nothing more than a hypnotic recall and a child's reactions. Hopkins invented or imagined or something like that. They'd use the word invented. An abduction experience.
Well, I recall
you. Family. I mean, it was, and on top of this, one last thing, and I don't want to get going on this, but because I still am so angry. They wanted all the photographs of that I had of the marks on people's bodies that follow abduction experiences very often, the straight line cuts, which are often very like 3 and 4 inches long, the scoop marks, and this is very dramatic stuff. The ground traces where the soil has been altered and so on. I gave them all those photographs. They suppressed them all, did not use any of them, and announced on the program there was no physical evidence. Now,
okay, but I remember you using words like slanderous.
No, I thought it was, absolutely.
Now, that's not NBC, CBS, ABC, even Fox. That's Nova.
PBS.
That's PBS. So if there's not an active agenda behind something like that, then what were they doing?
Well, I mean, there was obviously an agenda behind it. I think an agenda from the beginning that this was going to be a debunking effort, and I was going to be savaged any way they could do it.
But that isn't what we think of Nova. That isn't what we think of PBS, government-supported PBS.
Well, I have had a number of people say that now, no matter what NOVA program they're looking at, they don't necessarily trust the science that's being presented. And I think that for many people, and I had many letters too, as a result, people were dropping their subscription to PBS and so forth, and there was an uproar of letters and faxes and so forth sent to WGBH that produced it. And of course, Carl Sagan was central to the program.
Well, see, they weren't driven because of who they were to do anything but tried to do an objective program. So the fact that there was obviously, you and I believe, an agenda there says there's active, serious disinformation at work. I mean, I come right back to that, and that's how I brought you back to that with Nova.
I agree, Art, that the whole program could be considered as a huge piece of disinformation. That's exactly what the program was. But I'm not going to point a particular finger at whether it's Carl Sagan's personal thing. They had class as a consultant. Whether this is something that the government or some branch thereof was involved in. Whether that the WGBH intellectuals just think that there's nothing more ridiculous than UFOs. I don't know who is back of this or what group of what is behind it. I leave that to somebody else. I feel sometimes if we make too many, for myself, if I make too many specific accusations that I can't back up with anything except a gut feeling, then I look a little foolish.
Let me tell you a pretty interesting story. I just received an award. You know the Psychop people, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I received something called, I'm looking at it now, their Snuffed Candle Award.
Yes, I've heard of this.
Presented to Art Bell, blah, 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 for encouraging credulity, presenting pseudoscience as genuine, contributing to the public's lack of understanding of the methods of scientific inquiry. So, I thought, one of their charges was I would never bring anybody on who would disagree with me. So I brought on Professor Nickel, who ostensibly came on the program to defend the giving of this, in quotes, award to me. And it was a most interesting program, Bud. Midway through the program, I said, by the way, Dr. Nickel, have you ever heard my show?
Mm-hmm.
There was a long silence. And he said, actually, no. I said, excuse me, you've never heard my program. You're here defending your organization's giving this award to me, and you've never heard my program. Well, no. Now, to me, Bud...
Well, Art, I tell you, I've dealt with that man, too, Joe Nickel. And the basic point is that those people, are the true believers, and we are the skeptics. Incidentally, the New York Review of Books recently reviewed some books, and I was taken to task by Frederick Crews, the writer, and he just about went through the roof because a writer writing a book, I think, Aliens Among Us or something like that. I forget her, Jody Dean. It was a book put out by the Cornell University Press, and she said in the book that Hopkins is actually more skeptical than Carl Sagan, which caused the writer of this to have an apoplectic fit, I think.
I'm sure.
But here's the point. You see, somebody comes to you or to me and says, there's a story of a UFO that blah, blah, blah. Somebody saw and this and that happened. There was an abduction report. What do you think about it? What are the alternatives? You haven't heard the details. Just off the ground, to start with. What do you think are the possibilities there? Well, you or I could say, well, it's possible the person is lying, made it up.
Sure.
It's possible that the person is psychologically troubled in some way.
Yep.
Didn't really happen. Or that he's telling the truth. We have three different possibilities, but Joe Nickel and the skeptics only have two. Because of their belief system, number three can't happen. Therefore, they have to take, because of their theology.
We will absolutely have you, Bud Hopkins.
And, Bud, this has been a very serious-minded discussion this morning, and I guess I want to stay there in a way. I want to talk about whether what we're experiencing, many people feel that, for example, Michio Kaku, Dr. Kaku in New York City, there with you in New York City, I interview him frequently. He now rather thinks, he's a theoretical physicist, that there are as many as 10 or even 12 or more dimensions.
And we have to imagine the possibility
that these craft,
particularly with some of the
abilities they seem to
exhibit, may not be from somewhere else,
but maybe in fact from
another dimension, or
if you can imagine an Earth, a
parallel Earth, or many of them,
that they could be from these places as easily as out there
in space.
Well, it's certainly an intriguing theory. We've had many theories over the years. The time travelers idea, the idea that they are somehow interdimensional, as you just explained. There are all kinds of possibilities, and I really don't know much what to say. I have a funny remark to report of a friend of mine, Ted Blocher, who had been in theater for years, and somebody asked him once, when the UFOs are seen and then they leave, they disappear, where do they go? And he said, I don't know, maybe they go behind the scenery, which is sort of I suppose that's a metaphor for moving into another dimension. But one thing I'd like to bring up are just on exactly this point, which I find extremely interesting. But one thing I'd like to bring up are just on exactly on this point, which I find extremely interesting, and that is we have many reasons to believe, many case reports, that suggest when a person is abducted that the UFO occupants, the craft, and the abductee, or plural in some cases, are somehow rendered invisible. No one can see them. Are they in some other dimension, as you explain, or what? Is it some sort of technology?
Or even more mysteriously, Bud, that sometimes one person sees them and the other doesn't.
Right. Well, if that happens, it implies, I think, that the other person is somehow connected with the phenomenon in one way or another.
Exactly.
But I just wanted to report a case that was extremely interesting to me. I was visiting Australia a few years ago, giving lectures, and after a lecture, a couple came up, and they were rather upset because some of the things I had been saying in the talk intersected with experiences they had had. And they asked me a few questions and were quite nervous. Very, very nice couple. But at one point, the wife said, well, have you ever seen anything like this? And handed me 4 photographs, snapshots. And all the snapshots were in a sort of red, as if when you print something and you print it in a 4-color process and you only get the red going through first, that's what they look like. And I said I hadn't seen anything like this, and I said, were the other pictures in the same little film similarly affected? And she said, no, just these. And they were pictures having to do with a trip that they made when they took their children to a playground, little, very small children. Mm-hmm. And the first picture showed actually the children climbing on the slide. And I said I'd never seen anything like this. And the woman said, well, it isn't the red color that's the problem. She said, we are supposed to be in these pictures, and we're not.
Oh.
And I said, what do you mean? And there was a photograph of just a view out over the water and a sidewalk, and just a sort of a dumb, blank picture. And she said, my husband and the 2 children were standing here posing, and I took this picture, and when we got them back, we weren't in the picture. And the same thing for when the husband took pictures of her with the children. And this was a number of years earlier. In other words, the children, the pictures had been taken 10 or 12 years before, a little longer than that, I think. And I, of course, got very intrigued. And I said, well, what did you think about that day on the beach, on the playground there by the beach? And she said, how did you feel? And she said, well, we all felt kind of very strange. And she said, the thing is, the children always loved that playground and was the closest one to us, but they would never go back there again after that day. So I began to get extremely interested, and at any rate, I spoke to the husband and wife at some length later on, and without telling them anything about my suspicions. And at one point, the wife agreed to do hypnosis. The husband was not there. And what she described is, after she took the picture of her husband and the children, and she gave him the camera, they moved to a slightly different location, and he was taking the picture. And she said, all of a sudden, under hypnosis, with a lot of trepidation, she said, we're going up. She and the 2 children, straight up. And under hypnosis, as a little sort of false lead, I said, well, does your husband shout, that you're going up? That's the leading question. She said, he doesn't seem like he's moving. He's frozen holding the camera. Good Lord. And up they went, and she could see the craft, and they went into it. Now, this is a playground on a Saturday afternoon outside Brisbane. At any rate, they took her away from the children and took them into another room. She was extremely upset, and a lot of things transpired that were very, very typical of abductions, which I won't even go into. At the end of this, down she goes again with the children. They're reunited in sort of the hallway in the craft, and she can see her husband down there still standing with the camera up to his eyes. And when they go down, the husband puts the camera down, and they all walk over, and they don't remember anything more about it, and they get feeling very odd and go home. Well, what I was able to do finally was to do hypnosis the next day with the husband, who was very reluctant. And as he was taking the pictures, he was feeling a sense of dread. And then all of a sudden, he said, they're going up, and he was in tears. He said they don't even look surprised. They were frozen. So, again, I asked a little leading question deliberately, because it was what I call a false lead. I said, I imagine you turn and call for help. He said, I can't move. I can't do anything. He's holding the camera up to his eyes. And I said, well, I assume some people come over to you after a while. See if you're all right. He said, I don't think anyone can see me. Now, I have cases like this, and of course his recollections totally intersected with his wife. They were very, very frightened people by what happened. Now here we have talk about your situation of dimensions. Trying to figure this out physically. You have an invisible man at that point with an invisible camera and invisible film taking a photograph of invisible people, and yet what turns out on the film is actual picture of the surroundings with the invisible people not in them. Now, I have no idea what, and I'll just give you one more example. These are some of the things, incidentally, that we're going to be covering when we have the conference of some length. This is just hitting a high point here. But a woman who I've worked with who's had abduction experiences, Katerina Wilson, got off a plane in Chicago at O'Hare, and she went into the restroom right after she got off the plane, and then went over to wash her hands in the sink, and it was one of those sinks which has an electric eye which activates the water.
Right.
Puts her hands down, nothing happens, and she had squirted out the soap on her hands. She waited, she felt, well, it was broken or something, and she waits till somebody moves away from the sink next to her and moves over to there, puts her hands down, and still nothing happens. She tries 3 or 4 different places and the same reaction, and then she walks over to a baby changing table which had a little sink, and you could manually turn on the water, which she did, and she washed the soap off, but she got this very strange feeling that something was very, very wrong, and she walked over to a young woman and faced her. The woman was standing there combing her hair or something, and she said, "Can you see me?" And there was no response whatsoever. And when she went outside, she called her husband to tell him that she had gotten back, and he said she had arrived in Chicago okay. And he said, well, your plane must have been a couple hours late. And she said, no, it just got in. And he said, well, that's impossible. It's supposed to get in at 3 o'clock. It's now 5 o'clock. The situation of missing time. In the middle of O'Hare Airport, where apparently her physical presence, which was totally natural to her, she looks in the mirror, was unable to affect the electric eye connections on the water faucets. There's a lot more to that case, but I have other cases too, which would suggest that when the abduction is taking place, and this is why they can take place in the middle of the city, any place, and cannot be seen.
Like the big one in New York City that you have told us about.
Exactly. And the one in New York City is an exception to this. They deliberately wanted it to be seen. That's the very interesting thing about it. The case that I wrote about a witness, which is of extraordinary importance because it shows an alien desire to affect actually what political figures believe and understand about their reality. But I think that the fact that it was seen was a deliberate choice on the part of the UFO occupants. What we're looking at in these other cases is that somehow something kicks in. Who knows what the technology is or what the issue is of different dimensions or something. But at some point, the individuals are rendered invisible, as are the UFO occupants.
The lady in the bathroom, one would presume, had somebody been there with a camera, she wouldn't have been in that photograph.
Yes, exactly. I think that the fact that the electric eye activators on the water faucets were operating very much like a camera in a certain sense.
Sure.
There was nothing in front of them to break the beam.
No physicality.
No. So
that really gives some credence then to this whole dimensionality argument.
Well, I don't know exactly what aspect of it, because obviously we're talking about things that are so highly theoretical. It's very hard, and I'm not a theoretically inclined person. I'm not a big speculator, as you might guess. I try to pick this up by the human side, what happens to people, and
I guess subjectively then I would ask you, do you give equal credence to the possibility that these are dimensional beings or dimensional shifts that are occurring equal to they came from Zeta Reticuli or some other system through space and in a lot of time?
Well, actually, in a certain sense, I just tend to avoid making a guess. I don't discard any theory here, but
equally possible.
My issue really is that we don't know exactly what we mean by either of those statements very clearly.
No, we don't.
And one of the really sad things is the late Scott Rogo made a quite unfortunate remark when he said that he didn't think that the UFOs occupants were extraterrestrial because, he said, they're not doing what extraterrestrials would do. As soon as you say that, you're sort of stated the problem. Who knows? He didn't know what an extraterrestrial would be like, or would do, or what.
He didn't happen to go on and define that, did he?
No, he didn't. And of course, it just shows to me how sort of endlessly complicated it is to speculate on these issues, because it's like trying to discuss what other colors they may have on different planets that we haven't yet seen. It's a highly complex series of hypotheses that we have to consider. I leave that to the physicists and to others, and I go about my business working with human beings and trying to help them through whatever they've been through.
How do we get, you live in New York, how do we get, say, let's take the New York Times as an example. How do we get these publications or major networks to begin taking seriously what we know is really serious?
Well, I think all of us have been slowly eroding over the years the assurance that these publications have that such things should be ridiculed and dumped. I feel cautiously optimistic that somehow or other the public, just by what the polls show us, the public understands that something is going on out there which has not been explained successfully by the debunkers or the government or anybody else. I think that's a given. The public knows that.
Sure.
I therefore think that as long as the public is curious, that we're going to have mainstream media actually taking a more thoroughly objective look as time goes on. It seems to happen. It's happened to me. And oddly enough, I mean, this very week, I'll be doing actually cable television interviews tomorrow. We're doing this program as we speak, and I'll be receiving Nippon television on the coming morning to do a taping for a show they're doing in Japan, and then I'll be appearing on an NBC special, I believe the 17th of the month. It's a lot of media coming up in a short period of time.
Is that the NBC confirmation?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, you're right. I think that has a chance of being a pretty good show. And Japanese television, for some reason, and maybe you have some insight here, for years now, has been taking this whole thing a lot more seriously than the American media.
No, absolutely. You know, Art, it's a rather funny thing. I got a call a year or so ago from a reporter from the Manchester Guardian in England. And the Guardian is, of course, one of England's most prestigious and relatively speaking, highbrow newspapers.
Yes.
And he said, Mr. Hopkins, I'm calling because I'm curious to know if you can answer a question. Why do you think the mainstream media is becoming more interested in this subject? And I said, well, you're calling me. Why don't you answer the question yourself? Why did you pick up the phone to call me? Because it's extremely interesting. Slowly but surely, if one person, one media source expresses an interest, other people get interested too, even to ask why the first one was interested to begin with. So I think we're making progress. I think it's slow. I think it's going to be obviously very gradual. But having been in this since, having been paying attention to it since I had my UFO sighting 35 years ago, actually 1964. In those 35 years, I mean, it's been an unbelievable shift in media paying attention to this, and I feel cautiously optimistic. But still, the New York Times, the good old gray New York Times, just simply cannot bring itself to accept the possibility something may be going on.
Well, chuckle as they may in the audience, and though I present a lot of material that may or may not be true on my programs, I have a very open forum here. I am very much a skeptic, with the exception of one thing. I've had one very close encounter sighting myself, and you cannot have that about 4 years ago, you can't have that happen to you without it changing your life in really measurable, serious ways.
No doubt about it.
Same thing happened to me. So other than that, other than what I saw with my very own eyes, and my wife saw, thankfully, at the same time, about everything else, I'm skeptical, and I if I can't put my hand on it, I can't declare it to be so, but I feel it, and I know something's going on, and I guess that's about where you are.
Yeah, exactly. Incidentally, in my list of media, I just did the Roseanne Barr show on Monday. So
oh, you did?
One more thing that I forgot to list, and of course, shows like that.
I'm curious. She's been after me to come on. How did she treat you?
Well, I liked her. I found her to be very genuine and funny, and obviously she's. As a comedian, she'll sort of take something funny and play with it a bit. But she seemed genuinely interested, and there was an extremely funny remark at the beginning. She says whatever comes into her mind in a real way, not just trying to be outrageous or something. But an abductee, young man named Jesse, who
Okay, we're at the bottom of the hour, so hold that story. We'll be right back. Bud Hopkins is here. Time is short. This is Dreamland. Almost interrupted myself to say, all right, back to Bud Hopkins. That's machines for you, Bud. The talk show mind hears a second of silence and jumps in automatically. I'm suffering with that. Well, all right, so this is a relatively new phenomenon. This whole disappearing thing, invisibility, in effect, you're the first to bring this to my attention.
Well, it's something that actually David Jacobs, I think, was the first person to make this public in a lecture he gave, perhaps 8 or 9 years ago out of Santa Barbara. It's something that I think many, many investigators have suspected. But until we got this evidence via the photograph and the fact that the water faucets would not work with their electric eye, beam, whatever. That's sort of physical, mechanical evidence that such things are happening. But we've had, over the years, so many cases of people seeing UFO occupants or abductees or whatnot just disappear before your very eyes. And we never understood whether that was just the person's perception, as if their imaging was somehow damaged or
a reality, yes,
or whether they simply did vanish. And I think we have to face the idea that such things do happen. I have a case too, which is not investigated at all, but it's just a report. But it's just intriguing in this context that a woman and her daughter told me about this. Was driving through some very dense fog, going very slowly, and they crashed into something, which they could not see, and stopped the car. And when they got out to look, the hood of the car was dented in a very perfect curving line, as if something that was bulging and curving had been sitting there, that they had run up more or less underneath and dented their car in, though they couldn't see it, as if it was in fact a craft sitting there. But I think we've got a lot of suggestive accounts like this that do buttress this idea, at least, that we have to consider this invisibility issue. And I hate to even use that word. It sounds so science fiction-y and so forth, but we're facing a technology that's beyond anything that we have ever run into here on Earth, and it sounds off the wall, but of course if it's going on, excuse me, if we are dealing with some non-human intelligence, then the sky's the limit in terms of what may be happening.
All right, I'd like to try a couple of quick calls. First time caller line, you're on the air with Bud Hopkins. Hi.
Hi, Art.
Yes, sir. Where are you?
I'm in Sumter, South Carolina.
All right, welcome.
Thank you very much. I was in Okinawa, and I was in the Air Force, and I have fond memories of Yakina Port.
Well, we have a lot in common then.
Thank you, sir. For Bud, I was thinking about the kinds of things with the alien abductions or tinkering this kind of thing, it seems to me that there's something really funny going on. We have this missing link type of thing that everybody keeps talking about that scientists can't explain.
In an evolutionary sense, you mean?
Yes, exactly.
That's a good point.
And but it keeps getting stronger. We keep getting smarter. Our progression intellectually and scientifically keeps increasing
exponentially.
Exactly. And I was just kind of curious if you had any comments on that.
All right, let's put it into a very distinct question. Bud, there are many, many, many people who think that in our evolutionary progress, or perhaps lack of it way back when, there was, like, as in 2001, some sort of intervention at some point.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's certainly possible. I would never discount that at all. I'm afraid that I'm outside my area of expertise, though, in terms of the issues involving human evolution. I know that recently there were some discoveries made which were quite widely written about, of something that does I think almost a whole skeleton of a creature that did seem to be something of a missing link. So perhaps the missing parts are getting filled in. I don't really know, but there'd be no reason to think that beings of a higher intelligence who are able to do all kinds of genetic engineering mightn't have helped us along at some point. I just don't know enough to have about the evolution of man here in a technical sense to have a firm opinion about it, but certainly possible. Absolutely. Thank you for your comment.
It was a very good question. I've always been curious, and I too think there's at least the possibility, certainly even within mainstream science, with that period of time missing at such an opportune moment in our history.
Well, and of course, I believe it was Crick who posited the idea that we had been artificially seeded by DNA that happened to be floating here and there.
And then there's Sitchin.
And of course, there's Sitchin. There are all sorts of theories and areas of evidence and so on.
Then there's one more thing, Bud. There's one other time that's very curious in our history recent. That, of course, being 1947, 1948. When you look at the whole Corso story, and I think I spent more hours interviewing the late Colonel Corso than anybody in the media, you've got to look at that time as a bit of an exponential jump in technological capability. I mean, there's no question about it. The transistor, all of that's a little foggy when you start looking into Bell Labs. The jump we took right after the alleged crash at Roswell, the idiotic performance of the Air Force in recently trying to debunk Roswell. When you look at all of that, there's a kind of a suspicious little period right around the alleged Roswell crash that should be telling us, or may be telling us, something as well.
Well, if we have wreckage, crash saucers, and it is my personal belief that the evidence persuades me we do. And if we have scientists who have heads on their shoulders, and we certainly do have such scientists, they did come up with the atomic bomb and all kinds of other things that helped us win World War II, for better or for worse, I should say, in terms of what they've come up with. One has to assume that the minute that material was recovered at Roswell or wherever, it was taken into a closed area, and it was researched from one end to the other, and who knows what sorts of things might have come from it. My problem with Colonel Corso's story is that he is basically saying nothing was done until 1961, until they gave him a cardboard box full of stuff rattling around. Well, I don't think that happened, frankly. He may have been involved in something along the way, but the point is, by 1961, the research would have been incessant. I mean, when you think of Vannevar Bush, who would presumably have been involved in it, and a number of other absolutely top-flight scientists, every scientist in the world who had the necessary expertise and clearance would have wanted to get into the act and given up everything else to work on that alien technology. And I suspect that probably did happen, but I don't think that Colonel Corso was centrally involved, because I don't think 1961 means anything as a date.
Perhaps not, but 1947 may.
Oh, I think absolutely. Well, but you know, when there's a plane crash nowadays, like the TWA flight and so forth, every little scrap of that plane is dug up from the ocean bottom and brought into a giant hangar and reconstructed. The place is locked up, and people devote the rest of their life to trying to put the damn thing together and figure out what happened. I suspect that happened in 1947, 48, 49, 50, and by the time we got to Colonel Corso in 1961, I think he would be, if he was involved, I think he would have been a footnote in the whole thing.
That may well be so, but even when it comes to our terrestrial aircraft, I would remind you that TWA Flight 800 was reconstructed in the way you just suggested. People are still devoting their lives to it, and we still don't have real answers.
Exactly. No, there are many theories that have emerged, but nothing, it's one of the really strange things. But it happens as an automatic thing. We just do that, and I'm certain. Can you imagine in 1947 if we had gotten a hold of a whatever model Russian MiG was around in 1947, how that would have been squirreled away and studied from beginning to end? And I think that happened with the crashed UFO. The crafts themselves, the equipment, the broken pieces, and so forth. And I'm certain that there wouldn't have been a scientist in the United States, if he'd heard about it, who wouldn't want to have been in on the study of it.
Or another example, Bud. We fight endlessly about what might or might be at the Cydonia region of Mars, despite the recent awful photographs rendered up by NASA. We fight about that, and that's on Mars so far away. Off the island of Okinawa, we have ruins that scientists right now are tearing their hair out about. They can't decide about something under the water, accessible, whether it's a natural formation or whether it is something that man did long ago. They fight about it. They don't know. It's right here, much less on Mars.
Right.
So, I don't know about...
Well, there are mysteries and mysteries and mysteries. One of the amusing things, I was on this Roseanne program, a skeptic appeared, and actually a rather nice man. But Roseanne, when he was poo-pooing the whole UFO phenomenon, Roseanne said something to this effect. She said, but wouldn't it be more interesting and nicer to think that there are mysteries out there that we haven't solved, and that something like this could possibly be happening that could engage us and engage our minds and imagination and curiosity? She said, isn't that better? And he said, no.
No?
No.
He said no?
He said no.
And gee, that's like Joe Nickel not listening to my program.
It was quite amazing to me that anybody would say that. And I think mysteries such as the one you just described in Okinawa and so forth are extremely intriguing. And, of course, I mean, there are mysteries in all sorts of areas.
There's a nice new one for you. I don't know if you've heard about it, Bud, but they've uncovered what appears to be an ancient circle in Miami. Have you heard about this one yet?
No.
No, they tore down a building, ready to put up a $100 million project, and archaeologists, right in the middle of the building they tore down, have discovered this circle that approximates exactly what's at Stonehenge. And there's a big fight going on in Miami now about whether to plow it down and concrete over it, move it, save it. What they're going to do with it, they have no idea. But when you get time, look into it. It's absolutely fascinating. We've done several shows on it, and we've got them delayed a little bit, but the bulldozers are ready.
Right. I can see the battle between the people who are extremely curious and interested in, and the archaeologists in preserving it, and the poor man that's bought the property and trying to build it.
That's right, of course. Yeah, but you see, the same paradigms that are ready to collapse if there's a revelation regarding UFOs and whoever they are challenged by something so old that it simply cannot be explained. The same exact paradigms, religious, institutional paradigms, are all challenged.
That's true, but there's a major difference. If it happened a long time ago, it's or elsewhere on another planet or something, Mars or whatever. If it happened then, that's really extremely exciting, and it does shift the paradigm as you just explained. However, it isn't going on now in the way that the UFO phenomenon is going on, and this is something that's affecting men, women, and children daily, nightly in the United States and around the world.
Yes, but if there was once a technological civilization on Earth that came and went, the important part here is went.
Yeah, right.
Then that means that the same possibility exists for us.
Oh, exactly. But the reality of this being so. This is why I'm so involved in working with abductees. This is something that happened last night to somebody. I have actually received phone calls 2 times from people who had just recovered from an abduction experience maybe 5 minutes or before. And in a way, it's very hard for me to get quite as exercised about something, I mean, even Stonehenge with all of its beauty and its enormous mystery. And I've reproduced it in a little book I did called Sacred Spaces, having to do with my own sculpture, my own temples that I make, and temples around the world. Even though I'm just totally drawn, fascinated by that, the idea that I'm dealing with human beings going through this stuff right here and now, and as we speak, there are people in this country right this moment who have been taken.
No doubt about it. Bud, we're about out of time. East of the Rockies, do you have a very quick question, I hope?
Yes, I do.
You're on the air. Go ahead.
Hi, Bud.
Hi there.
This is a quick question. This is Olius from Atlanta. We always hear about how traumatic these abduction experiences are, and understandably so. I was wondering if in all your years of research or investigation, you've come across anybody who has come away from an abduction with a positive feeling or any sense of happiness from it.
That's a good question.
It's a good question. Almost every abduction experience involves a range of emotions. People are often absolutely terrified. And they can be almost instantly calmed down. They feel wonderful. They can even feel almost as if they're a little high. And then they could go through anger. They can go through a lot of emotions in the same experience. So it isn't as simple as I had a good experience, I did not have a bad experience. All the experiences are emotionally extremely complicated. I think it's again trying to push it into the good guys or bad guys particular polarity, and it doesn't really go there. But the experiences are intrinsically complicated emotionally.
All right, Bud, as always, you've done a wonderful program. We're out of time, but we do have enough time for you to give any contact information you would like to give or upcoming event information.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. We are doing our Intruders Foundation conference here April 10th, and people can contact to get information about it by calling 212-645-5278, leave their name on the answering machine, or they can write, if they've had experiences, to that's Intruders Foundation, if Box 30233, 30233, New York, New York, and the zip is 10011. And if people are interested in any of the books that I mentioned, that's by calling 1-800-905-8367. And they can get information about ordering the books. But I would be very interested in hearing from people who feel that they may have had similar experiences, similar to the ones we've discussed. And I want to thank you, Art, very, very much for, as usual, an extremely intelligent and interesting series of questions and discussion. I appreciate very much what you've been doing here.
Thank you, Bud. Good night. We'll do it again. Take care, my friend. That's Bud Hopkins, folks, at the top of his game. No question about it. I'm Art Bell, and for tonight, that's it. From an area near Dreamland. Good night.
This has been Dreamland, a program dedicated to an examination of areas in the human experience not easily nor neatly put in a box. Things seen at the edge of vision, awakening a part of the mind as yet not mapped. Yet things every bit as real as the air we breathe but don't see. Please join us again next week at this time for Dreamland.
Somewhere in Time with Art Bell continues, courtesy of Premier Networks.
My guest is Ann Druffel. Ann Druffel has been investigating UFOs and abductions for longer than many of you have been alive, and since I was about 12 years old. So Ann Druffel has gathered a lot of information, and we're talking about what those things are and what they do, and abductions, and soon how you can actually avoid abduction. All of that tonight and more with Ann Druffel. Stay right where you are.